Let's ow.
Let's ow.
Take two. Let's make a deal. Hello, and welcome to the Saladcast on Wednesday, the 28th of December, 2022. I'm your host, Dan Train. Joining me today, Zachary Burgess.
Rob tried to go to Mexico, but he hit a wall.
And Rob again. I ran into the partially built Trump wall in my office.
Oh, no.
Can't get to Mexico.
But you can. You just walk around it.
Well,
that's
yes,
the trick with the Trump wall.
You find the bit that wasn't finished. Or, you go across the sea, which is probably easier from here, right?
Probably.
From here to Mexico, yes, probably.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily go to the US and then just
I
just fancy a really long walk across the desert.
Well, I mean, it's technically not that long of a walk to get to something in Mexico. It's not like there's a big lump of desert immediately on some parts of the border. In fact, in some parts of the border, there's a town immediately.
Yeah, on both sides, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's presumably where all the wall mostly is.
Well, yeah, you'd assume so. Focus on the non-desert parts first. Makes some sense.
What are the
not
two...
that any of it makes much sense.
Well, no, I guess not.
No.
Maybe we're
we
ascribing too much logic to this whole process.
What's the two towns next to each other? Juarez and El Paso?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. It's amazing how much, almost everything about the Mexico border I know from, crime movies or something.
Yeah,
drug movies or Breaking Bad or Sicario or whatever.
Do you like
or video games, yeah.
Do you like the mining tunnel or, drug running tunnels? Is that actually a thing?
It is a thing, yeah.
It's not just, a filmic...
No, they make real tunnels, really complex ones, I think. And then they get found, which is, must make... I suppose it's just worth the effort, right?
I suppose.
Yeah, so why not do it? They have air conditioning and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they'd have to in the desert.
Yeah.
I guess it depends how deep
would they,
down
or would
they
it
are.
just be shaded and then thus actually sort of just fine?
Presumably they have to be relatively deep to get below the more unstable desert terrain.
Don't know.
I mean, it's not like it's a sand desert.
Geology is
in
that part of the world. It's probably different.
It's not like tunneling under the Sahara or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, how far down do you have to go before it's no longer sand?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Sahara could potentially quite a long way if you're on the dunes and stuff. But, yeah.
And then what even is under there? Atlantis.
Rock, right? Atlantis.
Diamonds.
You don't have to do any tunnel, you just walk through the buildings.
Just nothing but diamond down there.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
Nothing. That's the whole point of this bit. That's why we're talking shit, even more so than usual.
We're organising an expedition. We're going to go to Mexico via sea, and then we're going to dig through the sand and find Atlantis.
find the desert Atlantis.
Yeah.
What? That's where all the water went from the desert, is it? It just fell into this hole. I never quite understood. They don't really explain it, but in Evangelion, right? They have a whole subterranean sort of city scape with a sky and everything, and it's how is that a thing? How does this work? How does this place work? These weird pockets under the earth.
Yeah, is it artificial or?
I don't know. I suppose they don't really explain it all that much. It's just here's a hole. We've got a whole extra city down here. What you see up top is just I don't know if it's Pleb Town up top and Important Town down below or something, but Pleb Town.
Usually Pleb Town's on the bottom, generally, in most sci-fi, right?
Well, unless there's something real bad on the surface that's going to blow you up all the time.
That's true.
As might be the case in Evangelion.
Yeah.
I mean, that absolutely is the case.
Yeah. What's the stupid city in Zion, right? In
in Matrix.
But that has engineering on the bottom, doesn't it?
Yes.
Anyway.
Engineering at the very bottom, where the core heat is,
Yeah, with the heat of the core of the Earth.
so they can use their geothermal power.
I mean, makes sense.
Yes, sort of. Apart from the bit where that brief moment where they show what appears to be like straight up pools of lava in the party room. And it's just like, I'm not sure if that part makes sense.
No. I mean, that whole party scene is ridiculous.
I mean, it's funny that they have all this limited resources, and yet it's like, no, we can carve out this massive rave.
Well, presumably the caves must have already been there to some extent.
So maybe carving out a massive rave room is better than just, sending a letter through everything.
Morpheus is like, we are still here, and we are gonna rave.
Could they have bottled the bits of lava and made really fancy glow sticks?
What you put it in? That would be the problem.
I don't know. Science glass.
Science glass.
Future science glass.
They've got those hovercraft thingies. They could probably suspend it in.
Oh,
well, invert the hovercraft so it suspends a small chunk of
electric
something.
arcs flying everywhere from your weird.
Oh man, that'd be so rad. That's a proper rave glow stick. That is. With little. Everyone's hair suddenly goes mad in the general vicinity of these things.
And everyone's worked on their hair so hard in the Matrix universe.
Well, I mean, it's pretty hardcore plaited, I guess. There's a fair quantity of dreadlock going on.
Yep.
Or everyone just shaves it off. I will quote. That Matrix, we'll have to check if that Matrix 4 is on.
Oh yeah, I need to see.
It's on streaming services.
The dumbness of that.
Yeah,
must be experienced.
Things must be seen.
I'm surprised there wasn't a video game tie-in, being as it was based on. It's about a video game, isn't it?
Well, I mean, there kind of was, I suppose. That it wasn't the Unreal 5 demo. Was it at the same time? No, that was quite a lot later, I guess.
It wasn't.
It wasn't that far
It was
apart.
around the same time, yeah.
Yeah, because I guess they did get Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss to
they
talk about the Unreal 5 demo as well as be in it.
Yes, they did.
And isn't that how they got into the conversation of Keanu Reeves talking about how he doesn't mind that people would mod his model from Cyberpunk into doing terrible things to other human beings?
Oh, why?
Say terribly sexy things.
Right, yeah, of course.
And he was like, "No, that's cool, man." he was well on board for making Keanu porn.
Whatever makes you happy. It's his character, Johnny Thunder.
Silverhand. Johnny Silverhand.
Who's Johnny Thunder?
Johnny Thunder.
Johnny Silverhand. Yeah. Well,
this is a podcast about video games.
It's a podcast about video games. It's been a year.
It's been a year.
And now the year is done and there's another year. But this year happened.
This year has happened. This is our general, not really Game of the Year podcast, but a sort of review of the year, I guess. Our thoughts and impressions, and not necessarily of every game that came out during the year, but just, we can reflect on things we discovered.
Are we doing that first?
I mean, we can do it whenever, right?
Yes, but that's why.
There's no real flow to these anymore.
As opposed to what? Just going through what we've played normal style.
Yeah, I suppose we could go, actually do our normal weekly recap at this point and be bi-weekly recap and be what have you been playing? We could do that first.
Cool, let's do a recap and then we'll have all of the games talked about.
Yes, everything will be on the table at that point.
Yes,
for judgment.
Fully tabled. So, Zeg, what have you been playing in the past 2-week period?
Well, fortunately, not that much. There was some more.
But there's been even more time to do nothing. Well, play games.
Yes,
not really.
No, you say that
less time.
Family gets in the way a bit.
Not for me.
Nothing will get in your way.
That hasn't been really any new stuff apart from Dwarf Fortress, which I guess is technically new.
I mean, technically, yeah.
Game of the year.
Technically a game of this year. In some ways. Except that's what I wanted to talk about with Dwarf Fortress is like as I've played more of the Steam version, and what I was talking about last time, where it's like it's weird because it's like it's almost hiding stuff from you in the new UI.
Yeah.
Like the more I played it, the more I realized that like it's actually kind of weirder than I thought. Actually, the main thing that makes it more obvious is they've in the last patch that happened like last week, they've introduced the toggle to classic mode graphics, so you can just switch it back to ASCII.
Oh, interesting.
That's good. That's what you need, right?
I mean, it's a good learning tool, is it? Like to be like, oh, what did it actually look like?
Well, yeah, but
that doesn't let you actually interact with the old version, does it? It's just the graphics.
Well, the thing is that like. So I also went and read some of the devlog stuff to see what has actually been happening recently.
Right.
And it seems like there's not... Because we were theorizing about whether there was going to remain like two versions sort of like Minecraft, but it seems like everything is just going to be in this one version from now on. So classic mode is like... Even that... You can get it as a standalone download from the website, but it is... basically the same. It's just that the classic mode download from the website doesn't have any of the Steam graphics integrated into it, basically. So when you hit this toggle, it's exactly the same game functionally. It still has all the same UI, just with ASCII versions of all the like tabs and shit, which I think kind of looks kind of ugly. Like I don't like when
so this is like a new ASCII graphics.
Yeah.
Weird.
Oh, that is slightly strange.
Like I don't really like.
So it's just a skin on the new UI layer.
Yeah.
Rather than showing you the old game.
Yes, basically.
Which is running.
Well, but that's why I was waiting for this to happen to see how it actually functions, because that's where this gets weird. Because there's a few examples of things that that are like where the new graphics actually makes things more difficult, and some of them are like things that just are missing or like haven't been implemented into this version yet or something. And then there's weird like things that are literally just graphical. So one of the things that I've been finding really annoying, which is like a missing feature that used to be there, or well, it's not really exactly a missing feature. It's more just like a unfinished bit of UI essentially. Like when you're in the list of stocks or the trade depot where it just lists all your shit. Firstly, the list starts uncollapsed, which is just awful. Because you have this giant list, it's a typical like category tree list type thing, but it's fully expanded. And then so if you've got a fort with thousands of items, you're like, well, I need to click on each of these individual categories to collapse them so I can actually even scroll this list in a reasonable period of time. So that's just like UI, like bad UI, where it's like you just need a collapse all button or like set it to be collapsed by default or whatever.
Sure.
That's just, that wasn't so much of a problem in the old UI because of the way I believe in the old UI it did start collapsed, which makes it slightly weird that it doesn't start collapsed in this version.
That's an intentional change.
Well, or a mistake. Like,
okay, that they didn't
finish the implementation properly or whatever. And so there's that, and then there's like things which I get annoyed by but are much more minor. Like, for example, if you look in the stock screen, which lists all of your stuff, it no longer gives you extra information on that list. It tells you like how many of a thing you have, but it doesn't tell you like how much this item weighs. And, most people are never going to care about that, but there are certain applications where you might care about how much something weighs. Like if you want to make like storage bins out of a really light type of wood, because that makes it slightly more efficient for dwarves to carry around. And so now to get that info, instead of just looking at the stocks list and looking at every type of log you have and then just being able to see the weight, you now have to like look in your fortress for one of each kind of log and then click on it and bring up its individual info and then look at the weight there. And it's just like, that's just slightly more inconvenient, because they've kind of tried to simplify the UI by hiding this unnecessary information, which is like, yes, technically it's unnecessary. You don't really need to care that much about this incredibly minute, like, optimization, basically, but, it seems slightly unnecessary. But then, so what was weird is, like, that was all stuff that I was already finding weird. But if you toggle it into classic graphics, the thing that I noticed is that some of the things that I find... Some things in like in the new graphics tile set version actually make the game harder to interpret than the ASCII version. And that's where I was like, well, this is really weird, because like if you're watching your dwarfs run around and do stuff in the ASCII graphics, if they pick something up, the icon flashes between the dwarf icon and what they're carrying.
Yeah.
So you can see if someone's carrying something as they're walking along. And similarly, if they go to like eat a meal at a dining hall, when you can see them carrying the food, and then when they get to the dining hall, the food item gets placed on the table as they're eating it.
Right.
So it's like that helps you see what's going on. But in the graphics version, that just doesn't happen. So you just see dwarves running around. You don't know what the fuck they're doing. Even if they go into a dining room, they just go in there for a second and then walk out. Then you don't have any idea that they've actually eaten anything visually.
Weird. Okay.
So it's just like these weird bits of like.
So how was it represented? So was there like a hunger like version of the dwarf character, or like is it just a visual for food that's missing? Sorry, I missed it.
It's the item they're carrying.
It's the item they're carrying flashes on top of them as they're carrying it.
I see, yeah, because it used to blink.
Yeah, it used to blink between them and whatever else was on that tile, essentially.
But what would be the solution?
Well,
would you have to have something in the corner of the tile to show what they're
Well, the solution would be something that they've already partly implemented, which is that, like, if a dwarf is holding a pickaxe or a weapon, that shows on their sprite. Like, they have a specific, like, extra bit on the sprite where essentially where their hand is, where a weapon icon fits.
But you couldn't do that for every
Well, you kind of could.
item.
Like,
right.
Or just show that they're carrying something, like use some kind of generic icon for
That'd be
that
better.
slot.
It wouldn't be as good as the ASCII, because you couldn't tell what it was, but it would be...
And then that also extends to, like, that part is weird because that information definitely still exists. Like, you can toggle it into classic mode and see that it's still there.
Okay.
But then there's certain other things which are just, like, literally sort of missing graphics, where it's just not, like, I guess it's not done yet, because obviously it's not done. This is only version 0.5.
Right, yeah, fair enough.
But, like, there's just things where it's, like, a lot of seeds don't have any graphics. They're just invisible if they're on the floor. And then, like, when crops get planted in a farm tile, there's no way to tell. Whereas if you switch it into the ASCII graphics, you can see where if a tile of farm has something planted in it as a different tile, as a different icon. And I don't know why that one isn't in. Like, that one's pretty easy to change, because it doesn't even depend on the plant. Like, it literally just changes to basically sort of furrowed soil when it gets planted. So you can tell that there is at least a plant there. And again, that's just like, in the graphical version, that's just another, like, usability problem, because it's like you can't tell if your farmers are actually doing anything, because the farm plots look exactly the same, planted or unplanted. You actually have to click on the farm plot and look at it to see that it contains seeds. So yeah, I don't know. It's just like, some of this can definitely be fixed by them just missing the graphics, but then there's these other bits where it's just like, the information is there, it's just not represented in the graphics yet, and like, why not? I mean, it's kind of important. And, you know, when I complain about the weight of logs, that's one thing. But when it's like playing in the ASCII is actually literally easier to interpret what's going on than playing in the graphics, that's sort of a problem.
Yeah, that feels like a mistake, doesn't it? They've done something a little wrong.
Well, I don't know. It was always going to be a trade-off. Like, that was a bit ambitious for them to first time make the tile set good enough for an experienced Dwarf Fortress player to actually prefer. Well, in terms of information, maybe not in terms of like aesthetics, but in terms of, you know, density of information, it's going to be a tough.
Yeah, like, what would the alternative have been for like the food carry or the item carrying in general? Would they have actually literally, like, how good are how good is the dwarf graphic? Would they have had room to put like some extra things so you could see what they were carrying?
Done that
they've done that with tools and weapons, so you can see when they're armed.
That seems good.
It just like sticks out of where the hand is on the icon.
They'll just have to do the same.
I mean,
couldn't they have just put a baguette in then for like?
Yeah, but I mean, I would assume that. Well, I guess I don't know exactly how this whole system works, but if you want to imagine a universe where it's just like, here's a bunch of sprites, you just have a scaled down version of the sprite, like a slot on the dwarf for a scaled down version of every sprite that could just be put in there over where their hand is to just represent they're carrying something, and that would solve the whole problem. Well, or for everything that has sprites, because as I said, some things are just invisible.
Oh, so you mean, so if they just had a placeholder something.
Yes, just like a slot, like an overlapping sprite that sits on top of the dwarf sprite that is just their held item slot.
I see what you mean. A little bit like I'm thinking more like the graphics on like an RTS or something, where something in the frame around the.
Well, not like that.
Not like a selection with like full on health bar or something, but just some little hovery.
Well, I didn't mean like an icon. I mean it could just use the actual image of the thing they're carrying to scale down and like put where the weapon would be in their hand.
Okay.
It's just like it's just a sprite that would sit on that place on top of the dwarf icon.
Yeah, I guess it's not like the representation is
but that assumes
photorealistic, is it? In Dwarf Fortress, so it doesn't matter too much.
But that assumes that this graphical implementation is actually that complicated, because that's why I'm wondering about the tools and weapons where it shows them holding it. I'm wondering whether is that like an additional sprite that's stacked on top of the dwarf sprite, or is that actually a fully redrawn separate sprite that it just switches to? Because if you're imagining that this is just an upgrade from old Dwarf Fortress's system where everything is one tile and you're just putting a sprite over that tile, then that does kind of limit you to not being able to do that, to do the carrying thing, because that would be why it would link between them in the old version. So I don't know. But yes, I mean, it's weird because there's a lot of people like naturally assuming that this is like the finished version of Dwarf Fortress, which I really think that maybe they should have just launched it as early access, even though it's never going to come out of early access.
Right.
Like, just launching it as a sort of finished product is weird because it's clearly not. And even to the extent that there's just like, you know, you go in when you start a new game, adventure mode isn't even in the game yet, and it just has like a coming soon next to it. And it's like, well, yes, every game does that nowadays. Like, every game that's released still gets constant patches or whatever.
I mean, I was reminded that there's. Like, you remember when I think it was EA turned around and said, "Hey, we're shutting down the servers for a whole bunch of old games."
Yeah,
I went and played a bit of Onrush online,
right?
And that is one of those games that has had since launch coming soon placeholders in its menu that were never implemented.
Right.
Coming.
So it's like, it happens. It definitely happens. I'm pretty sure Redout 2 is going to fall into that category as well, because its main menu has some coming soon items on it, and I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't know.
But I mean, at least in the Dwarf Fortress case, you know adventure mode is coming soon because it's in the old version. It literally is done. It just needs some porting work to make it, or maybe some graphical work. I don't know what part is holding them up on that.
Or is it just like bits of UI?
Yeah, it could be like making a mouse-driven version of the adventurer UI could be kind of complicated because you need to have like weird direct control over a character, and how do you do that in a mouse? You like have like a ring of icons around your character that show you which directions you can move or something maybe. But yeah, it's just like, it's clearly not a finished game, but it's fully released, so it has to be analysed as a finished game, and then all these things that are missing or like not actually done are just going to be weird. So I don't know. But apart from that, I mean, you know, it's still Dwarf Fortress. Once I got more into it and started getting more of a handle on some of the things that have changed, like how you assign jobs and whatnot, I was like, yeah, this still works as Dwarf Fortress, I guess. My fortress has had I started another fortress, but this one, I tried to get back into it in the first fortress, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to realise where I've already gone wrong in this one, like all the little design flaws that I've made because I didn't quite remember how Dwarf Fortress works. So then I was like, I can start a new one, do that again, and do it slightly better. But then this fortress, I've run into the problem that is like, not my fault, it's just how Dwarf Fortress works now, which is that goddamn thieves won't stop trying to steal away shit. Right. As soon as you build like a tavern so that visitors can come to your fortress. Actually, I guess this was added relatively recently, I think after like a couple of patches after taverns were implemented, but they implemented like intrigue, where basically people can disguise their identity. So, like, random people will show up in your fortress and try and extract information from people by just talking in the tavern. And then if they discover that you have an artifact in your fortress, they'll come back later and try and steal it. But they just won't fucking stop in this fortress. Like, every season, there's just another random thief trying to steal one of my artifacts, immediately getting discovered by, like, a dog or a cat in the corridor. And then there's a slight because obviously dogs and cats are very alert and will tell you when they discover a thief.
Yeah.
But then there's like a weird sort of bug, I guess, where if that thief had originally arrived as part of a group, like they're all colluding or whatever,
To the tavern or to the raid?
to the tavern.
All right.
So the group arrives and they're colluding to get this information. But then one of them will leave and then be the one who's trying to infiltrate. So he'll basically leave the fortress and then come back in stealth to try and sneak his way in. But as soon as he gets discovered, all his friends who are still in the tavern become hostile, except the game doesn't like correctly mark them as hostile. So it's just like if you just look at them, they still appear as just a visitor and they're just trying to relax in the tavern, except now they're trying to kill everyone.
Oh, no.
Which is, it doesn't actually affect the gameplay because you can still, everyone in the vicinity will still try to kill them and fights will still happen and all your dogs will jump on them and all that stuff. It just doesn't mark them as hostile in the actual UI, so you don't necessarily know what the fuck's going on.
Or in the old, is that not a bug from the base
Yeah, I think
game?
that's a bug from the base game.
Right.
Because it doesn't correctly update their, like, hostility to the fortress based on their group affiliation or whatever.
How the hell do they fix bugs in this game? It's so
I know.
complicated. How do
Yeah,
you even...
they're so weird, aren't they?
Yeah.
But I imagine they're probably quite reproducible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that one, certainly.
The Sims should probably play out the same way.
They must have like a weird like test harness where they can set up really weird scenarios.
Well, it's basically save states, right?
Yeah.
That's what it needs. It needs a save state system.
Yeah. But yeah, this constant wave of thieves constantly trying to steal my shit. And it still suffers slightly from an even older Dwarf Fortress problem where sometimes when you get alerts, it either uses the character's real name or it uses a generic name. And obviously, if the character is one of these thieves who are using a false identity, if it does use their real name, then you don't know who the fuck that is because no one has that name in your list. And sometimes it just doesn't use any name at all and just uses a generic, like, it's a swords dwarf that's attacking everyone. And you're like, well, who the fuck? Who? Who is this? It's a swords dwarf, so I better look at the list for anyone who's wielding a sword, I guess.
Could be any one of these guys.
Or just look for where the fight's happening. But by that time, it might already be too late. You got to get your military in there quick and just beat them the shit up.
But can you just pause at that point?
Yeah,
and maybe, look around.
You can pause and then scroll through all the lists and try and find the information. Look, it's kind of easier to like be looking through the combat list and look for like a dog is fighting, and you're like, well, he's probably fighting one of the bad guys, so I can at least zoom to the dog, and then the guy who's probably adjacent to him, that will be one of the bad
It's
dudes.
probably the dude. Yeah.
And luckily now with the it's not necessarily related to the modern interface, but commanding military has gotten slightly easier over the last few versions. So you can literally just go to a military squad and say, kill that guy.
Right.
which at least makes it easy enough to clean up that kind of problem, rather than the old way where you just had to tell your military squad to stand in the vicinity and hope that they see the bad guys.
Hope that they aggro. Okay.
But yeah, that seems to be a problem. And also, like, I feel like maybe I need to start thinking about restricting the number of visitors, because it's really kind of like, as soon as you have a tavern, you just get like 20 odd visitors showing up and they're just constantly in and out. And it's apparently a huge security risk, I guess. And you can mitigate it somewhat. I'm seriously considering just putting like weapon traps on the entrance to the tavern, because then as soon as they go hostile and they try and run out of the tavern to attack people, they'll just get immediately sliced up. Assuming, of course, that the hostility is tracked by the game and not by the UI. Because if they don't register as actually hostile, the weapon traps won't. But since everyone attacks them, I assume they must be
in the
internally
game.
recognized as hostile. But yeah, putting a bunch of weapon traps over the entrance to the tavern might work. But the trouble is, if anyone passes out on a weapon trap, that'll activate it as well. So if they're super drunk,
If they fall on it,
if they're super drunk,
stumbling out of the pub,
out of the tavern, and then they pass out on that square, they just get instantly murdered.
I mean, it's a good incentive to not get absolutely
trashed.
grotto.
Yeah.
Well, in reality, it's actually safer to not actually serve alcohol in your tavern, because dwarves, being as they are super alcoholic and just require alcohol to even function, dwarves have no idea what like the limits are for normal races, so they just constantly get them insanely drunk and then they die from alcohol poisoning.
Oh, I see. Like what other races?
Yeah, other races.
That's interesting.
So it's actually just safer to not even bother serving alcohol in the tavern. Just have it being a meeting place.
Okay, so how do you like get alcohol to your dwarves then if they require it?
Well, they just drink it out of the storeroom or your dining room or
Oh, I see.
whatever.
They just go steal it.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, they drink straight out of the barrel. Or if you give them a mug, they will use that, which they prefer. They do prefer to at least have a mug they can dip into the barrel.
Okay, nice. Just don't do it. Don't they just get drunk there instead? Then?
No, because dwarves know their own limits. That's
Okay.
personal drinking.
Okay.
That's not being served by a random dude who doesn't know what the shit he's doing most of the time,
This is part
apparently.
of my carefully planned meal system for the week.
I mean, you
You
could
get a barman who's human or something. Or
well,
have to-
yeah, I guess you could if you got one of the guests to stay in your fortress as a permanent resident, and then, although
hired them.
I imagine that probably wouldn't work because as soon as their allegiance changes to your civilization, they probably inherit the knowledge of that
Of how the beer
of
works.
how the beer works or whatever.
Yeah, but it's not going to improve their tolerance, is it? Is it if they flip sides?
Not
to you?
them, no, but
No.
they might serve a dwarven amount of alcohol just because they're part of a dwarven civilization at that point.
Yeah.
Just because they know.
I mean,
And that's
maybe,
probably why people come to the tavern for the dwarven amount of
Well,
alcohol.
maybe.
That's,
and if you want to be ridiculous about it, maybe it's better to just constantly get everyone in your
wasted.
because then you can deliberately fill the tavern with weapon traps and get a bunch of free shit for all the people falling over drunk and getting murdered by
Yeah.
spikes, and then you just take all their stuff
You've made it the intentional death tavern.
Yeah.
because it's not your fault; it's their fault.
Can you get the imposters or the intrigue people wasted so they forget what they heard? And then
Yeah, I don't know what 'cause
about your
they
artifacts.
do have it is like an actual skill check, and they have one of the skills you can get is how skilled are you in scheming.
Right.
And that affects how well you can create false identities and convince people to give you information. So I don't know. I assume that all these characters that are made like this must have pretty high scheming skills
High
for their
scheming,
plans to
yeah.
even work. And also, your dwarves apparently are very dumb. I mean, I guess none of your dwarves are skilled in scheming, so they're very easy to get
Easily
information out
susceptible.
of.
Right, yeah. They're very loose-lipped. You put posters in the tavern walls, like World War II style.
Dwarves are little, right? Are their tankards little as well? So they would have to actually.
I don't know what the
It's like the serving size at the tavern.
well, no, presumably
like
the
normal,
serving size is
still a pint.
big because dwarves drink a lot, so it's probably like a normal sized mug. It's just big compared to a dwarf.
Yeah.
Comes in pints.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anyone fancy a pint? I only raised I was watching the was it? I think it
was
was
confused for a moment whether it was a genuine question.
No,
It's like-
no, actually not. But
Maybe
I
later.
think it was Christmas Eve or something. They were playing the Far Show Christmas special.
Right.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
just that I'd forgotten some of them, like just the ones where they're playing like a serious scene, and of course Paul Whitehouse's character just works in and goes, "Do you know what a pint?"
Man, Shooting Stars was just the best.
And fast.
And the Far Show.
Oh, yeah, and the Fast Show, yeah.
Man, I mean, there are bits of the Far Show that I don't actually think hold up all
Well,
that
no.
because it's way more random than I remember it, and it's like
That was the whole point. That's why it's called the Fast Show.
I
isn't
know,
it?
but it's
Just like move on to the next one.
yeah. Even now, I'm watching it. I'm like, okay, what just happened? Like my modern brain is now just like that.
No, a lot of the
so
sketches
bizarre.
are not good.
Yeah. I think that was sort of the takeaway. But they did of course play the classic like "All Around My Arse," which is like the one of the best. The Far Show.
Yep.
Love it.
That Johnny Depp really weirdly liked, right? So he
What the
Far Show, yeah.
the folk show, the folk singers, or do you mean the show in general?
just the show in general. He was a fan, and he turned up, didn't he, in the Suit You Sir? I think in the special.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I remember trying to ask my mum how to explain what the joke is in the Suit You Sir thing, and it's like I still don't even know. Like I get that it's a innuendo. She just said, "Oh, it's just an innuendo. It's just innuendos."
Yeah,
and
pretty
it's
much.
like I get that. Okay, I don't know.
That is kind of all it is, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just that like, they're just super into
just-
G'ing up your Randy side, I
Yeah.
suppose. Are you Randy, sir?
Yeah,
Is she up for it?
exactly. It's just the fact that it's so inappropriate, isn't it? But it's
Yeah.
like they're not.
I don't know, more or less inappropriate than the sketches where, like, you would turn, it would be a normal family scene, and you turn around and be the next door neighbours just shagging, just right there.
Yeah.
Morning,
morning. Yeah, that's a classic. Stupid.
And that's Dwarf Fortress.
And that's Dwarf Fortress.
The far show is kind of Dwarf Fortress.
Gotcha.
Pinky, pinky.
And apart from that, I just played a bunch of normal stuff. Except I did also play through the entirety of Dust and Elysian Tale again.
Oh, really? All of it?
Yeah, in like 10 hours.
Wow.
Mainly because I had one more achievement to get, and I was just like, oh yeah, I meant to get this ages ago, and I never did. So I was just like, well, fuck it. I need a break from all the other normal games that I played. Let's play something different and something real old.
What Chivo was that?
The one for doing it in hard.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because I don't think it actually tracks if it doesn't give you the lower difficulties if you do it in hard. So I had to do multiple runs.
I see.
Actually, there's more than one achievement in that you have to get in separate runs, which is really annoying. But I had all the other ones. I just never had finished it in hard. I think I got like most of the way through it the first time I tried to get that achievement, and then just stopped.
Oh, right.
So I was just like,
ran out of steam.
I guess I think that was because I was doing that hard run immediately after I'd already done another run to get one of the other achievements. And doing 2 runs in a row, I probably did run out of steam. But this time I was just like, yeah, I'll just go back and run through that real quick. I know how this works. Although weirdly, like...
That was a fun game.
Well, yeah. But weirdly, like, hard mode... Really, the only difference is just like you die.
Yeah.
You just take way more damage.
I mean, it was pretty harsh sometimes anyway. Right?
Yeah.
Until you started leveling a bit.
But the thing is, like, the way the equipment and stuff in that game works, and to a lesser extent the leveling, because really it's the equipment that makes the biggest difference. Once you get ahead of the curve, it's really easy, except that really the only thing that doesn't get any easier is the damage how much damage you take. So even in hard mode, you'd always die super easily, but it's still quite easy to get ahead of the curve on like your damage output.
Right.
So I was totally just waltzing through the enemies, providing I wasn't actually getting hit. So I was destroying all the enemies really quickly, but I can't take a hit.
See, I always seem to remember that, like, the damage output being quite low in Dust, right? That you had to combo things for quite a long time until they actually died.
Only if you don't get ahead of the curve, basically.
Yeah,
if you get lucky with a couple of a couple of good pieces of weapons or armor or whatever, you can easily get ahead of the curve and stay there from
Yeah, maybe I never did that on my run. Like, I just remember like spending ages like trying to build up the mass. Also, there's the combo count requirement, isn't there? For was it Achivo? Or just
there's and a mission and an achievement,
yeah.
But you can just do that by equipping that one amulet that lowers your stats.
Yeah.
But yeah, and of course the actual like. Weirdly, right at the end of the game, where it's supposed to be the most hardcore bit, where you're like going up against this army or whatever, and they have like fancy technology, and you're fighting basically helicopters at a certain point, that becomes like super easy if at that point you're sort of the equipment is sort of caught back up, like you're finding equipment in that sequence that you're then immediately going to use.
Right. Yeah.
But the thing is, for some reason, those pieces of equipment are like still insanely overpowered. Like, because at that point, the equipment you're getting is instead of just like a stat buff, it's a stat multiplier. So instead of just like plus 40 attack, it's like attack times 1.2. So you stack those together and your stats just go nuts.
Yeah.
So you're just destroying, even though this is supposed to be the hardest part, you're just completely annihilating these helicopters in like 2 hits because your stats are so ridiculous now. Because of these multiplicative, and you can stack the multiplying ones. Like if you have 2 rings that both have multipliers.
Well, that's quite good fun.
Yeah. I mean, it does kind of, at that point you do kind of start to lose the sort of actual technique of the combat of that game. You pretty much just like, jump into the aerial dust storm, a shit ton of lightning spews out of you and everything dies.
Yep.
It's like you're not actually using any of the combo attacks or like even ground attacks. You're pretty much just flying through the air at that point, spamming magic.
Creating the little white sparks that go everywhere and murder everything for you.
The final boss does put up a bit more fight because he can actually block. So you do actually have to slightly be smarter.
I don't remember the bosses in that game particularly. I remember the first one, I think the fiery guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about it.
They're all basically the same. Like the fiery guy, then you have the water lady, who's really more of a lightning lady, I guess. And then the giant zombie ghost,
Rah.
and then the final boss, which you fight in a volcano, of course.
Oh yes, no, okay, I think I do remember.
Kick him into the lava,
Yeah,
and then you also die. And then maybe a sequel, except that never happened.
yeah. Yeah, I can't remember what happened. There was a story, wasn't there, about around that studio? Like something happened. I say studio. It was like mostly
One guy, yeah.
Yeah.
What does Elysian mean again? I think it's some kind of Greek
Yeah,
mythology
probably.
thing, is it?
Yeah, is it like a place? Is it like some kind of like
Heavenly place?
yeah,
Elysium.
it's something like that.
Because I think Champs-Élysées means field, I think. So I think it means Elysian
Elysian
field.
field,
I think
yeah.
so. Dust.
Yep, I played for all that, and I got that achievement, and then I'm like, I never have to play this again, I guess, because now I have 100% achievements.
Fully platinumed or
Yep. Add that to my however many games on Steam right now have 100%, which I think is like 9.
nice.
Yeah, it's the Elysium, or the Elysian Fields, or the Elysian Plains is according to Wikipedia, a conception of the afterlife that was developed over time by Greek religious and philosophical sects.
There we go.
Initially separated from the concept of Hades and
I see.
things like that.
Does it have a disco?
That's a good question.
Is it dusty?
Yeah. So it's a sort of splinter concept in Greek.
Weird Greek heaven sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that covers the actual stuff. I mean, all the normal things that also happened. Rocket League and Dirk and all that stuff.
I've
You want to do a combined segue?
maybe, because I've managed to stay out of Rocket League.
Right.
Like I haven't gone in, and I'm kind of not missing it at the moment, so that's okay.
Well, you had been playing it quite a lot at the end of the season.
I've been playing it a lot, yeah. But what it means now that it's no point me really going into the season because I've already missed several weeks, right? So it's like,
Well, it's not even a quarter done yet.
yeah, I'm always to the wire on the pass anyway.
Although
right?
actually,
So
that does remind me of something I did want to mention about it. Like, I don't know if they'd done this the previous season and I just hadn't noticed, because I mean it's not something you would notice, I guess. But like, they've kind of sneakily started disobeying the rule of like Rocket Pass, because you would expect the Rocket Pass, the 1 to 70 is where you get the stuff, right?
Yep.
Because
that's the usual rule.
that's the premium zone, and also the free stuff tracks along up to 70, and then you don't get any more free stuff after that. And in previous times, past 70, it's all the like recolored stuff, which, as we previously discussed, is no longer random, but it is colored or whatever.
yeah, which is a downgrade.
Yes, which sucks. But what I've noticed in this season, which might have happened before and I just didn't notice, is that they've started disobeying that in that now there's actually new stuff past 70.
Oh,
It's mixed into the coloured stuff, but there are
no.
legitimately different things
that's interesting.
past 70 just mixed in with the coloured stuff. Like there's a completely...
So they up to the like 110 mark or something?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily meant to... It's not represented like that. They just appear to be randomly mixed in there. It's not like they're saying the pass is now up to 110 or anything. It's just that now slightly higher above 70 in amongst the colour stuff, you'll get things that aren't just recolours.
Huh.
Like a whole new goal explosion, and like the specific ice and fire versions of the car are not in the 1 to 70. They're past 70.
Shit, it's the ice and... Is that the season theme?
Yeah.
Oh man, maybe I should have been.
Yeah, now you need to be glacial.
Oh fuck.
I don't think there's that much ice or fire, to be honest.
Oh okay.
But there's the car. That's about it.
I mean, I never
I've
got
noticed.
the old ice explosion. It never came out of the
right,
out of the
yeah.
drops.
But yes, I find that a bit. If anyone cared about it, that would kind of be a thing to be annoyed by. But I don't think anyone does care about it at this point. Maybe on some Rocket League forum somewhere, there are people who noticed and are bitching about it, but it's not going to be. No one else is going to care.
Probably somewhere, but that is kind of sneaky.
Yeah.
But I guess they don't say that particularly.
No, I mean I guess it's just like that's how the UI represents it, but it doesn't. There's never been any. well, maybe right at the start of Rocket Pass, they explicitly said 1 to 70 or whatever.
Well, yeah, it used to be that you couldn't see past 70 unless you started
yeah.
getting close, right? So if they changed that, like,
Yeah, you can still scroll past 70 from the start now.
oh, okay, right, yeah,
Up to like 100 or something. You
Okay.
can't see the whole of where the credits go to until you start going all the way
right,
up
yeah.
there.
Which if they changed that, then there'd be some,
Some uproar.
yeah.
But I think that is still the same. But yeah, it's just weird that they've sneakily changed that slightly. But who cares?
Well, it doesn't matter for you, obviously.
Well, no, in theory.
Burn all the way through it immediately. And of course, we did some Derg Yuletide.
Yep. Kill some elves.
Shoot the elf, yeah. The only real difference, isn't it? It's like, yeah, okay, there's a few presents about the level that might have an extra loot bug in, or Swarmers, yeah. And they say ho 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 and you mash them up.
Yep.
But
How big is Derg? Like,
Oh, what you mean?
obviously it's a successful game, but I just mean compared to, like, I don't know, obviously not Fortnite, but compared to Rocket League or something, is it about the same?
I mean, I don't think it's in the same quote unquote league as Rocket League.
Open up
but-
Steam and look at the top played games right now, and then you'll
But
be
it's
able
not.
to see.
It's clearly popular. Otherwise, they wouldn't make so much content and stuff, right?
Yeah, and also
I mean, there's
make
still,
it for essentially free.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's supported only by optional DLC cosmetics.
There's still, yeah, they're still selling copies, and also it's had a fairly major boost recently, I think, thanks to Game Pass.
Right.
Because obviously they just get that Microsoft money, right? It's just cash injection
Yeah.
Yeah.
at that point. But no, I don't think it's that big,
No.
honestly. But it's it's
Well, I mean,
it's successful enough to
enough,
keep
yeah.
going. Yeah,
I mean, we have no idea how big Rocket League is any longer.
that's true.
It's not purely Steam any longer, so we can't even use the Steam stats to work that out.
No, that's true. Yeah, because it won't give us the crossplay number.
I mean, Epic claims, if you go on the Epic store, it claims that Rocket League is like the number 2 free-to-play game after Fortnite, so that really doesn't tell you anything either, really, considering what is on the Epic Game Store.
I mean, I'd find that mildly. I would have thought something like Genshin would have been up there.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's there as well, but how much behind? I don't think Epic gives you numbers for that, it's just they say it's...
They say, oh, what they rank it, but don't.
Yeah, they
stat
rank it.
Okay, so what am I looking for? So how do you find
Go
that
to
number?
the store, I believe, and then there's or is it in the drop-down under store that it says stats?
I can't read from here.
At the
Yeah, the bottom one.
Interesting.
And then there should be a list in there somewhere that's like top 100 most played.
It's like most played there on the left.
Yeah, on the right. On the right.
Oh, yeah. Is it on there?
Well, that's
I mean,
the question. Is it
I
in
mean,
the top
that-
100?
Valheim's still up there, that's doing well.
Destiny 2.
I'd forgotten. Oh, Destiny 2, yeah, of course, that's going to be pretty big. And Apex is going to be massive still. And of course, COD is massissive.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
TF2? That's amazing.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's been
I-
having a bit of a resurgence
Oh,
lately.
really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, TF2 is amazing. It's still going, honestly. Okay, there we go. Rocket League is there.
It's still, even on the Steam version of Rocket League.
I don't know if you what are these numbers?
Scroll up and see. It's like most played currently.
Okay.
Current and peak.
It's peak.
Yeah, okay. So 33,000 today,
But today is a weird day. I mean, they're going. I don't know.
Well,
Isn't it? I don't know. Maybe not.
and 45. Yeah, within some time period anyway. So it's
keep going. Where's
there it is. I was not that far behind.
62.
20,000 players.
Interesting.
So it's 2/3 of Rocket League.
Yeah.
and Steam's Rocket League. It's below
true.
Satisfactory, which is
Yeah.
kind of
And
surprising.
also, Deep Rock's not cross-platform.
No.
Is it currently? So, but there are console versions, and
Yes.
so we're not reading those. But yeah, and in Steam alone, it is 2/3 of Rocket League.
Hmm.
Okay, that's better than I was expecting, actually.
It's the same as Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, which I'm kind of still. I mean, Sea of Thieves is way
On Steam.
bigger than it was at launch. Now.
That's true.
Yes.
To the point where I'm occasionally tempted to maybe go and have a look to see what happens.
Yar.
But you need a crew. That's the problem.
Yes.
Sea of Thieves is no fun on your own.
Yeah. Anyway.
Unless they specifically change that.
Deep Rock Galactic, same player base as Civ 5, the previous version
Oh,
of
the
Civ.
previous version of Civ.
Not Civ 6.
Well, where is Civ 6 even on
this
there?
list?
Yeah.
Is it above it?
That's the question.
That
Scroll up.
must have more players than Civ 5. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
22,
yeah.
yeah. I mean,
that's quite high up.
people spend a lot of time playing that shit.
I mean, it's close to Elden Ring.
Yeah.
So yes, Derg is relatively large, I guess.
Yeah, bigger than I expected. But for what is like a pretty small dev team and a pretty small studio, they're doing
Yeah,
well.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Interesting.
Nice. All right. So what have I
What have
actually
you been playing?
doing? Let's go. Let's start with a weird one. The Cambridge crew got me into playing a couple of rounds of something known as BAR. BAR stands for Beyond All Reason. Apparently,
Okay.
not a great name. However, what it is a pretty faithful recreation of the ideas behind Total Annihilation into a modern RTS. Like it's pretty much the same structure. Like collect energy from the sun or the wind, find metal deposits and build extractors for it. Build all your Tech 1 bots vehicles and stuff and aircraft and stuff like that, and they all have the nano guns so that they can fly around and repair stuff and set up patrol routes, and it's got a whole bunch of a whole bunch of options and commands and stuff you can do, and there's radar towers, and it is TA. It is TA in its like almost most full form. Like with leaning towards like Supreme Commander towards the top end of the tech tree, so you can get big experimental units and things as well. And it's currently completely free and sort of community built, and it's really quite good. Like it's not got a proper campaign or anything like that. It is designed for multiplayer and things like that. And we were just doing like 4-on-4, but 4 of us on a team versus AI and stuff like that. And man, it brought back all the stuff I really enjoy about TA. Like turtling is a proper option. Right?
Well, against the CPU, yes.
you can just build a massive base and then bomb the crap out of them with nukes if you can outproduce them, right? And win that way. But there's decent anti-nuke stuff as well. So you've got to work like the AI will build decent anti-nuke defense. So you've got to wear them down through that. And I had a pretty good time with it. Honestly, I thought it's a pretty good. I mean, it started to run quite badly after a while, but not because of like visual stuff. I mean, there was a lot going on. Obviously, my system was keeping a reasonable frame rate on it, but the bigger problem was like network latency after a while.
Right.
There was just so much going on that it was the game itself, I think, was starting to slow down a touch while it was trying to transmit everything more than anything else. But yeah, it's if you've got that sort of itch for an old TA like experience and you just want to have a skirmish against the AI, it's worth a look. It's pretty well made and pretty well thought through. I mean, it's just nice that they put like keyboard shortcuts to be in. I want to build 100 of these bad boys, and you can just go click, and the factory will queue up 100 of them, and it's like
nice.
That was actually in the original Trade or maybe only once you had the expansion. I think they added.
Oh, what they added, like
shift and control click on the unit buttons to queue up 100.
I see. Okay, yeah, I don't remember that being like. I only ever played the original. I don't remember that being there, but you could.
Because Total Annihilation was actually one of the first games that actually had unit queues.
Yeah,
because after Command and Conquer and StarCraft,
you really couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've got some, even on that front, they've got some neat things. I don't know if TA ever had a priority build thing, so I think if you alt-click in the build system in BAR, it will like go build this first, yeah.
Right.
But it's kind of disruptive because it's like it interrupts anything you've currently got building, which you don't always want, but like... it's like, oh god, I've lost all my constructors in a terrible idea in this part of the map. It's like I need to build a whole bunch more. I can just queue them up as priority. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I will give them credit as well because they've done a really good job of tutorializing the game. Not in the game itself, unfortunately, but their like documentation on the website is really very, very good at explaining how the economy of the game works and what you actually need to worry about. like giving you some raw, if you want to pay attention, like give you some raw numbers to be like, okay, at this particular point in the game, you should be outputting this amount of this and this amount of that. And you might decide that actually teching up is a bad idea at this point, like just rush them with Tech 1 units and do it fast and do it now. And they do a really good job of actually explaining how the systems come together, or what their thought of the current meta is, I suppose.
Yeah.
For the game. But yeah, shout out to BAR. I had a good time with it. And you know, it's totally free. Totally free.
Nice. Where's that available?
On their website.
Yeah, on their website. Just search for it. Yeah, beyond BAR or Beyond All Reason.
Beyond All Reason.
But yeah, decent thing. What else have I been doing? Noam and I continue to play Pentiment. Slowly, we're still working our way through. We're still failing every single check that game throws at us. I think this might be. I think I mentioned this before. I think this might be a trait with like when we play these sorts of games with Noam. Noam's a bit like doesn't game it. If you see what I mean, she plays it a bit like a real person. It's all like, oh, we might have gone too far. We'll step back on that one, or like rather than just min-maxing every approach to everyone to be like, right, we're being a right ass to that guy. We're being super nice to this guy. Whatever they say, you know. And as a result of that, like the Pentiment doesn't deal with that. I don't think particularly well. Like if you
subtlety to it.
Yeah, if you back up, you backing off. I don't think, or like treating people in a sort of middle of the road fashion, I don't think really works in your favor.
Yeah.
So we end up, a check will come up and it'll be like, you accused him of this thing, but you liked this thing that he said, and then as a result, you end up right in the damn middle of the check and just fail it.
Oh, I see.
So I don't. I'm beginning to wonder, like, because the game is now imposing like. There is a sort of time scale to the game, and I don't. We might be getting to the point where I wonder if it's possible for us to actually finish it at this point. Like, have we hit I assume we haven't hit like a game over condition, but maybe we've hit a bad ending. It's like state at this point,
right?
Because I don't possibly know how we're going to make this good at this point. We don't know enough. It's like it turns into a bit of a mystery that you need to solve, and you get options on how you go about solving it. And how you want to spend your time. And I'm not sure we may have spent that time wisely, as it turns out at the end. So we'd like, I think we don't know enough to necessarily push forward at this point. But who knows? It might throw some curveballs at us and be like, "Oh no, it's fine," because you're just playing through the story. Oh, whatever, we'll make it work. And there's an achievement for petting a number of animals. Make sure to pet those cats.
Gotta pet all the cats.
Pet all the cats and a few dogs. Make sure you
got pet them all.
You can pet the dog. There you go.
Yep, that's the important one.
It ticks that box.
Squish that cat.
Squish that cat. Yes, the weirdly drawn, slightly long cats that they are in this because it's all
medieval
in that
style,
medieval art style. Yeah. Smush that cat. Yeah, Pentiment continues to still be good. What else have I been doing? Yeah, let's talk about the Sinden. I got myself a Sinden light gun.
Ooh.
I say I got myself. Someone kindly bought it for me.
Ooh.
Even better.
Even better.
Yeah, so the Sinden light gun is a sort of Indiegogo-driven project to effectively make a light gun that will work on PCs, modern PCs, on modern screens. Because that's always been a problem since CRTs went away. Is there's been no real accurate way of doing a pointer, and while things like the Wiimote and stuff like that kind of simulated it, they were never one-to-one accurate.
For sure not. Yeah.
So yeah, it created a problem for things like light gun games. So there's a couple of things out there, like Aim Track, I think, is one, and there's one that's based on. There's another one of these that's based on putting like IR sensors around your monitor,
like
so
a track
it knows
IR thing.
Kinda, yeah. So it knows the limits of the monitor and will watch those. A little bit like a sensor bar on a Wiimote, I suppose, but it's wrapped around your whole screen, so it knows the boundaries. The Sinden works a little differently. The Sinden uses a camera and puts a border. You have to put a border on your screen, so you have to sacrifice some of your screen to a bright white blob around the outside, but it uses that to form and do some visual processing to figure out where the screen is through the camera. which has the slight advantage that you don't have to be particularly straight on or anything like that. You just have to have most of the screen in shot of the camera, and the software they provide with it has the ability so you can see the camera feed and you can sort of figure that out a little bit. It's like, okay, I need to be sat here, I need to be this far away from the screen, otherwise it's not going to work quite right. Which is the biggest problem with this thing.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I'm like, well, you're gonna have to sit a very specific distance away, presumably.
Well,
or minimum.
You just have to be far enough. Yeah. So, like in my little tiny office on this 27-inch monitor that I use for most things, sat where you are at the moment, Dan. So that's like more than you're not sat at the desk distance. No. You're more than that. There's like you've pushed a chair back against the wall, which isn't far away. That's enough. That's far enough, and that's probably ideal conditions for this thing. But you do have to watch out for light bleed. Like, so if it's a day, I have
Close
trouble.
Your curtains.
Well, yeah, and these blinds aren't quite good enough because, like, shutting these blinds, like, there's enough bleed in between the slats that it can see that as a light part, and that can confuse where it thinks the border is.
Yeah.
I think they could do work on that, right? The software side of getting this thing to work is its weak point by a long, long way. Because the gun itself is great.
The hardware's good, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just picking it up in my hands now because I can't help myself. It's like it's got a nice weight. I mean, it is heavier than the old G-Cons for sure. It is, yeah. But it's a nice feeling weight. It's a nice construction. Like the buttons feel good enough, I suppose. Yeah. And I've got the version with a recoil motor in it. So like when you're shooting on screen, there's a little solenoid hidden in the barrel that will give a nice the old snappy sound, I suppose. Yep. I don't think it's quite as cool as the old gun cons where the entire top of the unit moved.
Yeah, that was so cool.
But it's not bad. It's not bad. Obviously,
I mean, you couldn't get that in a home one. That was just the arcade ones, wasn't it?
No. I think didn't the home G-Con do it?
No.
Oh, no.
Didn't have a motor in it. That was great. That would be crazy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe not then. Maybe this is like maybe the first time they've done it. Or maybe not. Probably not the first time, but like, yeah. Yeah, and that feels nice. Although it does sound very snappy as opposed to like the sort of plastic click click that you get on a like arcade TC gun.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the biggest thing. It's like the Sinden software itself. I think they could do work on the visual processing to make it so it could work out where the screen is more readily. I don't know. Like it's the biggest square thing in view, right? It should be able to figure that out.
Well, I mean, if it's doing actual image processing, why can't the border be a different color? Because then it wouldn't.
You can do that. You can.
Surely that would solve the light bleed from outside problem. Because then it wouldn't be white at least.
Maybe. Yeah, I haven't toyed with that too much. I think I'm a little uncertain whether I might have a minor problem with my camera and that it's like the colored output looks very pink on it. So, but I might be able to adjust that. Like all the camera controls are exposed, so you can play with it to dial it in. Because I have had to dial it in. This is the biggest problem with this thing. It requires a lot of work. Like, it is not for the faint-hearted. Like, you have to be dedicated to the cause to get this thing functioning. So, like, in here, I've had to do some messing around with the camera settings to get the brightness, contrast, exposure to something that's a bit more happy in here. I found that some games themselves can actually throw the image processing a little bit, because if the games have a box in them on screen that happens to be quite bright, it got a little bit confused at times and thought that was the play area, moving the thing out. This
is just sounding more and more like the IR version is going to be better.
Probably,
putting IR marks on the edge of your monitor is probably the better solution.
You've got to wire something up, right, with power and having IRs.
Not necessarily. It could be a reflector, right?
No, I think they have to be emitters, or at least a solution that exists.
Well, sure, but you would think it could blast out the IR from the gun and look at the reflection.
Which I think is how arcade guns work. I think the arcade versions of these things actually do work by having like sensors around the screen, and that's how they work without calibration or anything like that. They're looking for the sensors around the outside. I think the IR solution is a bit more of a pain in the arse to set up, and you've got to be happy with having IR sensors
stuck everywhere.
Sensors stuck everywhere. But when it works, this is a pretty good solution. It's not bad. But the bit I've been struggling with is getting what I want to use it with to fully work well with the Sinden side of the software. So the Sinden software is a bit ropey, like in terms of its build anyway. Like it looks like an old Windows Forms app. It's that kind of like there's buttons and checkboxes and settings and gubbins everywhere. It's not a particularly well designed bit of software from an aesthetic point of view, let alone a usability point of view. But there are a lot of settings in that on its own. But there's not enough settings. There's still not enough settings in that. Like, okay, so one of the things that I struggled with a little bit is PCSX2, the PlayStation 2 emulator. You can get there's a plugin called Nuvi or Nuve, I haven't quite figured out how you say it, that can emulate the USB Gun Con 2, and it does that by pretending your mouse is the gun and the aim like that, and it can put a crosshair on screen and stuff like that, so you can see where your mouse movement are. But of course, the Sinden works by taking over the mouse and being like a mouse.
Of course,
so the Sinden can be a light gun for this thing. The only problem is like the combination of what you can do in the Nuve plugin and what the Sinden is capable of outputting don't quite gel particularly well. For instance, the Nuve plugin lets you set it's only really designed for mimicking a mouse. So you get to say, okay, my left click is a trigger, my right click is button A, my middle button is like button B, or like I think the G-Cons had like an ABC, a select, and a start, and a D-pad. But Nuve only really lets you map the mouse stuff to this, which would be fine, but Sinden is limited as to what buttons it can output. So it can only do left, right, and middle as buttons, and keyboard controls. It can do keyboard controls as well. But the Nuve plugin doesn't let me assign keyboard buttons to represent one of the other actions I might want to do. Like just having a start button would be helpful. And Nuve like has a shortcut for like you can press A if assigned A, B, and trigger that can also act as the start button. But some games use that as the let me out of the game shortcut. So like you're pressing the start button and it's like, no, I'm actually accidentally exiting the game, which is quite annoying. So like, if the Sinden software let me like map things like mouse wheel or had additional auxiliary buttons like an actual like fancy new mouse does, like the two side buttons, I suppose, that most mice have. Then I say most mice, but modern mice can have. If I could assign those to it, then I could actually solve this problem with PCSX2 and have enough buttons to make it work reliably. But like the Sinden software needs to be updated to do that. Now I could go a step further and start making auto hotkey scripts to do key remaps.
That's what I was thinking.
And people have recommended doing that. But I fell into a bit of a hole with auto hotkey as well because they've updated it to version 2, and version 2 is a completely different syntax to version.
Oh, really?
Version 1,
didn't know
and
that.
it's like and although you can install them side by side, and
Key
apparently it's smart enough
remaps
to
shouldn't be
figure-
that much of a hassle even in a new setup, right?
But it's just another hoop you've got to jump
Yes,
through.
right.
To get,
I mean,
to
it
get
is
all this to
ridiculous
work.
that already that you're having to run like another program on top of these already running two programs.
Yeah.
And PCSX2 makes it even more complicated because the mapping isn't always one-to-one in the way that it works. So you have to configure it to be like, I'm playing Time Crisis right now, which loads a specific set of like the resolution of the game and sensitivity settings, so it knows how to feed those back into the game. Except in my case, the file that you get with it, which has all these already predefined, has not been correct, not once. So like every time I load up a new game in, like I've only done Time Crisis 2 and I think I tried Virtua Cop Elite Edition. I've had to spend ages tweaking the settings in this ini file to be like, okay, that's not quite right. That doesn't lean up. I need to modify the X sensitivity. No, okay, that's not right either. I need to modify the center position. And I don't. That's not a failing of the Sinden. That's a failing of Nuve and PCSX2. Something about my system doesn't tie up with. Someone's already done the work to build this file that supposedly sets up these things
Well,
for
is
you,
it not-
but it doesn't tie up on my machine.
Is it not because the Sinden is using the edge of the screen? And
No, because
therefore
it doesn't work.
misaligning
It doesn't work with mouse either. Like if I've got the mouse cursor on screen, the crosshair doesn't tie up.
Well,
Like,
but even if the Sinden border's not running.
even if the Sinden's border's not running.
Right.
No, it's just PC. For some reason, like the one-to-oneness of mouse cursor to crosshair in game isn't quite right in PCSX2. So that's just one example, like of the pain you have to go through to get it working. And you can get it working, but then PCSX2 isn't a perfect emulator. It's pretty good, but it's pretty latent as well, so you can feel that a little bit, especially in a game like Time Crisis. You can feel it being not quite great. And that's even more of a pain in the arse in Virtua Cop, right? Because Virtua Cop is so cheap with some of its enemy placement. There's like, this guy's about to shoot at you, except this guy that's about to shoot at you is like off scrone right now.
Yep.
The camera is panning
very
it.
slowly.
So you have like a frame to get a shot in before he shoots you. So yeah, it's a little bit painful in something like that. I'm yet to try something like Duck Station, which apparently also has light gun support so I can play point blank and things like that. I messed around with MAME for a bit, so I got Time Crisis 1 arcade version working, but also ran into, boy, did that take me a while to figure out the arcane combination of settings I needed for that to work as well. Yeah, long story short, you've got to put effort in. It's effort. But you can get it working. The easiest thing so far has been Redream has light gun support, so you can play House of the Dead 2, the Dreamcast version.
That's good.
And that was really easy, apart from, here comes even more complication, apart from the border that you put on screen with the Sinden software couldn't render on top of Redream.
Oh,
it just didn't have the board, so it couldn't work. But there's a tool you can use called Reshade that is effectively a shader it gets in the way of like the shader process in games. So you can load this up and put Reshade it, and Reshade gets in, and then you can in its in program editor you can say, oh, I want the border effects please. So you can then configure a border inside Reshade to render a white border around the screen edge, and then it works.
So you just need
Reshade is in itself like an incredibly poorly documented bit of software that that I could not really figure out properly for a long time until it just sort of worked, and then it has an in-app tutorial, which is great. If you can get it to that point, like, and it's a weird bit of software. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's a weird bit of software.
Well, yeah, it's a dev tool of some kind.
Well, it's kind of like a community improvement thing. So you can like run it on old games, and it'll run shader hacks on your GPU to make some games look better. It's kind of interesting in its own way. But,
so it is just using a pure white border. There's not like some patterns in it or something.
No, it's just pure white at the moment. I don't think the resolution in the camera in the gun is strong enough to pick up like QR codes in the corners or something like that. But it probably should be. Like if they did a Sinden 2, that would be the first thing I would do, right? It would be upgrade the camera quality and upgrade. But for the most part, you don't need it. Like it's good and it's accurate enough for the games you're trying to play.
Yeah.
Also, I'm yet to try, like, apparently Typing of the Dead Overkill on PC just straight up has a mouse control mode.
All right.
So you can turn it into House of the Dead Overkill. And that should work real good, right? Because it's just mouse then, and there's no emulation in the way. I bet that's going to be a lot of fun.
So when you buy the Typing of the Dead, you get House of the Dead. Right?
Technically, yeah. You just get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's.
I don't think I've played Typing of the Dead since I could type. I should try that.
I know. I'm really tempted to go and try. Like, I will play Typing of the Dead as Typing of the Dead, but like that because it's got this like light gun friendly mode built into it.
Yeah.
Oh, and also House of the Dead remake. Apparently that came out on PC, and can be played pretty well with a light gun. So. Maybe that will be a purchase at some point. And there are actually a couple of like just straight up light gun games on Steam, like newly made light gun games. And I've also been pointed in the direction of something called Techno Parrot, which is apparently a way of emulating modern PC based arcade games. So like the stuff made by Raw Thrills, I think, and guess like that. Like modern arcade machines tend to just be
PCs.
Yeah, just Windowsy things. So Techno Parrot can help you out running some of that stuff. So that might be worth a try as well. Anyway, buyer beware is what I would say. It's not a cheap device. It's like over £100 for one of these, and it's but and you really have to be quite technical to get it up and running. But when you do get up and running, it's a good time. It's a good time.
Zinden. Get yourself a gun.
Yeah, I'll play some
Zinden.
more and like feedback what I think is good stuff to do with it and stuff like that. What else have I been up to? Let's talk about High on Life. Been playing that. So
Here we go.
some backstory.
Time for a rub review.
Well, yes and no. Like it's an interesting one. This, like for me, I think it's really interesting because it's High on Life is the new game from Squanch, who is it Justin Roiland? Yeah,
I don't know
co-creator.
how to pronounce it.
No,
Yeah.
one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty. This is his game studio. They've done stuff before, like Trover Saves the Universe and stuff like that.
He's the guy that does the voices in Rick and Morty
Yes,
as well. Yeah.
very much so, and pretty much every voice in this as well.
They all sound like Morty.
Yeah, kind of. So you kind of immediately know what you're going to get into. Like, it is the same in terms of like, I'm going to say quote unquote humor because
Right.
Rick and Morty has never. It feels like something that should land with me. And
It was very good, it has been very good in places.
Right, yeah.
Had some good ideas in it in the first few seasons and stuff, yeah.
But
It's a bit hit and miss.
Yeah, it's kind of never super landed with me.
Fair enough. I don't blame you, yeah.
And I think something of that is mostly down to the just how people talk in it.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in the case of Rick, that's funny. That's like the way Rick talks is great. But everyone kind of has a tick of some kind, and they're not super varied. Like everyone's
no, it's always the same.
It's very it's weird because in a way, I like a bit in my head is like maybe I should actually prefer this because it feels very natural the way people talk in that show, right? Like in a strange way, and
it's a bit. There's more naturalistic because it has so many stutters and pauses.
So many stutters and your nose, and
it's all on
I'm doing it
purpose.
quite a lot right now, saying like in the middle of sentences. Like I did it again,
as we do.
Yeah, it feels very natural, and like a bit in my head has been like I thought I kind of wanted that sometimes from TV and films and stuff like because it's all they always feel very structured and like it's a very unrealistic thing, right. TV and theatre and
so
really
you want some mumblecore? That's what they call it.
Yeah, I guess something a little more flowing. But maybe this is a step too far that way because it is all that. There's plenty of stuff towards the start of the game where characters are just talking over each other and you can't really hear what's going on, and it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't super land with me. There's the odd joke that don't get me wrong that is kind of like okay, that's pretty funny, or the odd messed up thing I should say more to the point where there's like anyway, I should tell you what this game actually is. It's a shooter, but your guns have faces and they talk to you. And they talk to you a lot.
Yes.
They're incessant.
Right in the bottom of the screen, because the face of the gun is on the back of the gun facing you.
Yeah, looking at you the entire time. And the main gun, Kenny, is possibly the most annoying. Well, I don't know, Sweezy's pretty annoying as well. But anyway,
one of them is JB Smooth, which is cool, right?
That's Gus. I think that's Gus, yeah. He's the shotgun guy who can fire like flaming discs at things, and also is a vacuum cleaner for some reason. Mechanically, it is just a shooter. Like, it's nothing particularly fancy here. Like the guns have a rechargeable special that they can do. You get a sentient knife at some point, who's actually probably my favorite character so far because he's just so crude and so. Not that I'm usually into crudeness, but he's just an Australian psychopath who just likes to cut things up. And it's just like, oh, you got to give me a piece of that. Come on, let's kill him. He's great. And in a weird way, he actually ends up getting sidelined a bit after you get him. Like the guns talk, but Knifey seems to not be that prevalent, which is a shame. Actually, I was quite digging Knifey's vibe.
The stabby,
yeah, just loves to stab. But like the thing I'm kind of digging in this is that it feels like a shooter that could have come out about 20 years ago and done all right. It feels quite old school.
You mean if without the jokes?
even without the I mean, the jokes are important and the setting's important, but like, there's just something about how it plays. Like, it's simple in its design, but the way things move, the way things animate, and the way things move around, and the way you're almost every combat scenario, if you wanted to, you could just use Kenny and just go blah 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 blah, and like you don't have to be too smart about it.
Right?
Like, you can just do it. But
this isn't Doom,
yeah, and the enemies aren't particularly clever in terms of like outflanking you or outworking you or something. It feels there's a simplistic nature to everything that I kind of like. Like, it's a throwback in a weird way, and that to me, like, it's a nostalgic experience without there being anything to really hook my nostalgia to thematically. And I'm finding that quite refreshing, quite nice.
Going back to the old school. It's retro without actually being a retro game or even looking retro, or it's weird because it's got some Metroidvania like elements to it as well. And there are definitely moments in the game where I'm getting like, I am feeling that Metroid Prime 1 vibe in spots. Really? Like, not because the game plays anything like that, but it's just there's a feeling to it and an air on occasion. That said, the sort of like Metroidvania-ash backtracking stuff about it is probably one of its weakest elements. There's an awful lot of collectibles about, which are mostly just money lying about, and they're tucked away, and sometimes you need special powers to get to them, and sometimes you have to do a bit of work to get to them. But there's so many of them that perhaps you end up just spending too much time looking around the environment, trying to figure out where they are and how to get to them. And they sort of appear on your little motion tracker, because you have a very not quite Halo level motion tracker as well. And the pickups will show on there, so you know when they're about, but you don't necessarily know how to get to them. And it falls into that slight trap of like, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff here that I can't get to yet because I don't have the movement capabilities to do that. To get there, yeah.
But equally, I don't quite understand why I would need to come back to this environment because I've done the main story thing in this environment. Like, why do I need to come back here? And it's not like it's one interconnected world. They do there's like warp gates between places and things like that, and so there's several separate areas. And unless you're on the hunt for money to potentially buy upgrades for your guns, which, as far as I can tell, so far I haven't really needed any of the upgrades for the guns. I've got them, but like I don't really feel them, if that makes sense. And I don't know if it's a necessary component to the game other than just adding something else to do. I quite like its art style. I think it looks nice generally, although it has got that, like, this is... You know when we talked about Sonic Frontiers, when it first came out, and we'd be like, this is like some students, like...
Tech demo.
It's like, well, they've just hit every checkbox in Unreal Engine to be like, yeah, we want that, we want that, we want that. I think they've done that here to some extent, because it's not a very... I wouldn't call it a very refined presentation. Let's put it that way. There's like art aside and design aside, like the actual technology they're using just feels like they've turned everything on. The TAA, for instance, is way too strong and creates quite a lot of artifacting as stuff moves around the environment. And they try and mask that by having motion blur, which is way too strong and makes the whole game feel very dreamy. Which, for a game that is essentially about turning the human race into drugs, maybe that's thematically okay. I'm undecided, but it does feel very swimmy at times in its look. So it's an odd, and there are definitely spots like some of the water animation just ends up looking weird because of the way the anti-aliasing is getting involved and messing it about and stuff like that, and it's. So it's a slightly odd-looking game at times. It's got like some horrible pop-in places, like not in major objects, like the world looks good at a distance in general, but like details on the floor will pop in, quite like extra stones and things will just appear. It's a bit ropey in that respect. But I'm kind of enjoying myself with it. You know, I'm not so sure I understand why the reviews have been as low as they average out quite low. But like so a lot of the sentiment I've been reading is that like this is actually quite a creative and interesting shooter. I'm not sure. Well, that was the sentiment I was reading from some places. I'm not sure I really agree with the concept of it being particularly innovative or anything like that. It is just doing shooter things, but it's not a bad time. Give it a chance. Well, it seems like a lot of people are giving it a chance. That was like one of the news things we did want to talk about, is that High on Life is one of the most popular games via Game Pass right now.
Oh, that's good.
So
good for them.
It has picked up an audience.
Definitely something you'd want to try on Game Pass if it was didn't cost anything
100%.
Extra. Yeah. See if you jive with the humour and the style, and then if you do, then keep going. If you don't, then do something else.
Yeah. So I'm. I think it's pretty good, honestly. It's just but even if I'm not all the way into its tone, I guess, and into that style, it's all right. It's all right. High on Life. Also, it's got I think it's got like the entire version of like a terrible film in it, like from the like it's got like Tammy the T-Rex or something playing on a television screen in your house, and it's got like Denise Richards and Paul Walker in it, and it's like, and I think there's an achievement in the list that literally is just I haven't got it yet, so I can't see exactly what you have to do, but it's like I think the achievement is literally like, yes, we paid for the license,
right?
Like
for the film.
It's like what?
It's weird.
It's so strange. Anyway,
that's clearly a reference to whatever that other game was that did it. What was that game? It was that game with the demon arms. Not specific enough.
The demon arms.
The ones.
The shoulder doing it.
The
Darkness. That was the other game that did that, right? That had an entire film in it.
Oh, really?
You could just sit and watch.
Wow. Was it like? Was it like made for the game, or was it like just?
I don't know on that one.
Just some weird external license thing.
I remember that Max Payne had its own weird TV shows in it.
Oh yeah. Classic.
The whole film was a bit much.
Yes. I'm sure there was something else I played as well, but I cannot remember at this point in time. It has eluded my memory. I'm sure it'll come back. Oh, I went back and played some Splatoon.
Oh yes, naturally.
I talked about Big Run last time, didn't
Yes.
I? So yeah, nothing else has happened since then, but I played a bit more Splatoon.
Have you had any matches with the lag glitch?
Oh,
the intentional lag glitch.
No, I have not. Not noticeably, anyway.
That was just a random YouTube video that I saw about it, where I was like, "Oh, what's going on in this routine?" Apparently, it's not actually. It's a weird lag glitch because it's like it impacts the whole server, so it's not like it's really benefiting one team over the other. It's just making the whole server lag. It's more interesting for being one of those things where it's just like, why exactly does this happen? Like, what is, because what it is like there's this one specific level, there's one specific wall where if you're using a roller and you flick paint like diagonally upwards at it, it just lags the server.
Oh, really?
And it's just like, what interaction is causing this to happen with the weird like interaction of the geometry in the paint or something?
Yeah, can it not decide whether to paint it or not? And it causes the server to freak out.
But that's just like very strange. Like, so how did anyone even discover that?
Well, I mean, any multiplayer game, right? Everyone's trying everything to get an edge.
So anyway, Splatoon.
Oh, Vampire Survivors. That was the thing.
Okay.
I jumped on that bandwagon to see what the hell that thing is about. I don't quite understand why that game is as big as it is.
I mean, it's of a type that has been around for a while.
Yeah, it's like I put it in the same category as idle games almost.
Yes,
like it is similar. Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's a bit of strategy to it. So Vampire Survivors is like a 2-dimensional, very rudimentary graphics, like auto bullet hell, but you're the bullet hell, I suppose. There's like hordes of enemies coming at you. It's a bit like a twin stick shooter, I guess, but you're not actually using a second stick to do anything. Like hordes of enemies are coming at you. You auto fire whatever weapons you have, and you have to murder them in order to get crystals to level up, and every time you level up, you can gain new weapons or new stat boosters, or power up your weapon so you can do more murder. And that's kind of the trick, right? You want as much DPS coming out of you as possible, so you can do as much murder, so you can get more crystals, so you level up faster, so you can get to the point where you evolve your weapons, and then you're basically a screen-filling wall of death. And that's pretty much the entire game, what I've described there. What you really do is walk around in order to try and make sure your weapons hit the people you're interested in. Like, the maps do have occasional, like... The maps are weird, because the maps are like a very small loop, essentially, but they actually do carry on further than the loop would appear it does, and like item positioning is actually tracked across several loops. So there are some things to find on the levels where normally pointed at you with big green markers to be like, go here and you'll find a permanent unlock. And it's roguelitey in that sense as well, and that the money you gain you can then spend on unlocks to power up your guy to make the run a bit easier next time. Because you only have to survive 30 minutes. That's the trick. The runs are 30 minutes long, and you've got to get to the end of the 30 minutes, and then you're just going to get munched anyway by some uber boss that I assume at some point might be beatable.
Yes, maybe.
But as it stands at this point in the game, it's like it considers that the win condition, which I've done once. And that's all this game is. And I don't... Like, maybe its simplicity is why people seem to absolutely love it, but I can't really understand why it's considered as hot as it is. Like, it's
the wagon.
Yeah, maybe. Like, what is the hook? Because I'm already getting kind of bored of it. Is what I mean. Like, I played like 5 hours of it. I was talking to Kippers about it, and he's played like 9 hours of it, and it's like there's nothing really much more to it than what I've described. And it's like, okay, you might get some more unlocks if you did well on that run, and then the next run might be interesting because you've got more in the pool, I suppose, that might come up. Roguelites. It's all right. If you like your white noise of sound, it will eventually become that.
Wall of white noise.
Yep. It's got an option in the settings that I haven't tried yet. Where what sound style do you want? Would you want classic sounds, or do you want blast processed sounds? And it's like, I might want to turn that on to make it sound more Mega Drivey. Vampire Survivors. It's a weird thing. Shrug. That'll be me. That'll do.
That's us. For the year.
Well, unless we want to quickly slip in some end of year.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Shall we summarise this year? What are your thoughts?
I mean, what is our game of the year? Let's just get that out of the way.
What are the hilarious candidates are?
Well, Tunic's up there.
Tunic, basically.
Splatoon 3 is up there for me. Like, yes, it's not as good. Well, it's as good as Splatoon 2, but it's lacking in content. Like, it is Splatoon 2 again, pretty much. But it's which is both its flaw and its strength.
Yeah, but is that a strength to make it a game of the year? I don't know.
And I'm not sure it is.
Well, I mean, if we're only counting like games Rob has actually played, then it's going to rank quite highly.
Oh yeah,
it's
high rank.
I think in terms of like our count for like most new game I've played this year, like Splatoon 3 wins hand down, right? Like I think I'm like over 60 hours into it, which is quite a lot for me these days. For something that came out in November or October,
quite late
in the year. That's quite a bit of time for me. And I played Cyberpunk this year, goddammit, and put a ridiculous amount of time into that. But not that much time.
No. Tunic seems like the all-rounder. Are we counting... hilariously, are we counting Dwarf?
I mean, obviously, that's the game of every year.
Of every year. But is it? I mean, is it better than Factorio is a question.
Yes.
Well, I mean, at the time, they were battling in the early access category, right?
Yeah, and now they're
both out. But they didn't come out in the same year, though.
No.
So Dwarf Fortress could be a game of the year on its own.
I think we should have a Zach's Factory game played this year of the year, but not having to have come out this year.
Well, I think Factorio is always going to win that, though. I
Always.
don't think any of the other
Really?
ones.
I think Dwarf Fortress counts in that category.
That's not factory game.
Well, what do you want to call it then?
Simulations.
Well, yeah, simulations.
It's a sim game. I
Sim game,
put
so-
it in the same category as like Sim City and Sim Ant in my head. You know?
Yeah.
City Skylines, that kind of thing.
I guess.
But that might,
But it goes head to head with 2
category.
Point Campus.
But these are yeah, that's what I mean. These are sims, but not actual sims of not like a flight sim or something
Right,
that's simulate or a truck simulator or something or
Sure.
farming simulator. This is
It's the sort of gamified sim, I guess. Like, but
some kind of, I don't know,
not accurate sim.
weird strategy thing. Anyway, is it this year? Is it Factorio again this year, or is it?
In terms of time, yeah, probably. Oh, in fact,
Yeah. I don't mean in terms of time. I mean in terms of what's the best.
Well, I don't have any new ones come out this year or come out,
Yeah.
fully come out.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Like, Satisfactory's still in early access.
Yeah,
That's still not done.
so that doesn't
Oh, yeah.
count.
And I can't think. Oh, Dyson Sphere, of course, that's still in early access.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, 'cause you played quite a bit of that this year.
Not as much as the previous year, I don't think. Did you notice that I think just because Steve has opened it reminded me, did you notice that Steve has done a year review so you can look at here's what
Oh,
you
like Spotify
played this
Unwrapped
year,
thing.
yeah.
Oh,
right.
Because that's the thing that everyone's doing at the moment.
Yeah, but
No, I haven't looked
But
at
Steve
that.
have done that as well, where you can look at, so obviously when I looked at mine, it's not like, oh yeah, like here's Factorio number 1, then Rocket League.
Oh, it'll be like Rocket
then
League.
Dirk.
I haven't played a huge amount on PC this year, so it is basically just going to be Dirk and Rocket League for me, and some VR stuff, I suppose.
And because it's one of these things that's specifically made in Steam, it has when it highlights Rocket League and Dirk, it has a little extension where it's like, you scored so many goals is what it says under
Right.
Rocket League, and then in Dirk it's
Oh.
like, you mined so much rock.
Oh, so it has some rich stats.
nice.
Well, not really rich stats, like a text quote that has been specifically added
Yeah.
for specific games.
Yeah,
because
but
it doesn't have
they
one
would-
for Factorio.
would have
It's just
had-
like, you played this game a lot.
They will have had to integrate.
Yes,
like,
they did that.
intentionally.
They did that intentionally for notable games.
Ah, that's kind of cool.
But yes, you can look at your stats and see on a month by month breakdown of what games did you play this month?
Huh.
What was your longest streak of playing games on Steam?
Oh yeah,
I think mine was 35 days.
of playing the same game
Well, not
every
the
day.
same game, playing a game on Steam.
Oh, playing a game. Okay,
Playing something.
without having not played a game. Wow. Yeah, a lot of people are doing these unwrapped things, but don't call that unwrapped, or you will be sued.
Yep.
Yeah. Although mine's always weird anyway, because I don't really like my Spotify Unwrapped, because I don't really.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah, it's
I
always
don't really
skewed.
I don't really go out of my way to actually listen to stuff specifically that much. It's
Yeah.
either just shuffle my library or
Yeah,
what's in my discovery list.
yeah. That doesn't give you any.
With the possible
stats.
exception of, I noticed all of the Command and Conquer soundtracks. On
Oh yeah, the
Spotify.
remaster Command and Conquer.
Well, and the originals. They've got the.
Oh, yeah.
They've got the the Tiberian Suns versions that they put out for that collection
Yeah.
a couple years ago. Or they've got the original mixes, or the weird OST mixes from the original CNC game that added all those voice clips to the audio. But yeah, you can go listen to How Much, and I was like, I'm very happy right now.
So ridiculous.
I'm
Yeah.
the mechanical man.
So what else is in
You got a Yakuza of the year,
I mean, I played through 4 this year,
right?
didn't I?
But it's not your favorite.
No, it's definitely not my favorite. It's no. I think Kiwami 1 might still be top of the pile. For
Kiwami ones. Is that where to start?
Well, technically, yeah. Actually, you should probably. Yeah, Kiwami 1 is the first game you should probably play. Although I think I'm going to start Yakuza 5 this week or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, get through another one in the year.
Yeah.
Or not this year,
I mean-
the coming year.
I mean, there might be 2 more Yakuza. Well,
Yeah.
like a
You might
Dragon
be falling
games.
further behind.
I know there might be 2 of them this year because like a Dragon Ishin and like a Dragon 8 are expected this year.
So are you going to vote for those on next year's league? That's what we're talking about here, by the way. We're looking at our fantasy league of games release this year,
which it looks like Dan has just snuck in the win.
Depending on what happens in the next 2 days,
depending if whatever the hell that Warhammer game is gets 0
Warhammer game.
Yeah, good get. I actually know what Warhammer Age of Sigmar is. That's the new name for just normal Warhammer, right?
Oh, is it?
As in not 40k.
Not 40k.
Oh, I see. They branded the base.
I read the other day. No, I don't know much about Warhammer, but I read that the original Warhammer game is retired, and you don't play it now. Age of Sigmar is the updated version.
Oh, I see. Like it's
so
like an edition change.
Is it still pre-40k then?
It's like
in the lore of the universe.
Oh, they're not connected, are they? 40k.
I believe they're meant to be, but obviously when it's 40,000 years in the future, it's not that connected.
Yeah, but one is like total fantasy.
Yes,
right? I don't think that because 40k is nominally like a, extends from. The real world, presumably. 40k is like in the future from now.
Well, yes, but 40,000 years in the future.
Yeah, I don't really know. I guess I'm not that into Warhammer to know.
Yeah, and anyway.
All you need to know is Space Marines are cool.
Yeah, and total bastards.
And total bastards, yeah.
Yeah.
Although shout out this year to Discovery game, Vermintide 2. That's a pretty good game. I need to play more of that.
Well, how did we do on our Warhammer games? I got 16 points out of Total War Warhammer 3, and Zach, you got 4 points out of Warhammer 40k Dark Side.
Yeah.
Yeah, was Dark Tide not as good as people were expecting?
Because it's basically the sequel to Vermintide in theory.
Yeah, but set in 40k instead of
the other Warhammer.
Instead of Sigmar.
But maybe I don't actually know, but I think Dark Tide is more about guns, right? It leads more into actual FPS rather than melee.
Right, yeah.
Because that was the special thing about Vermintide.
There's a lot of melee in Vermintide.
The melee was actually good.
Yeah, because you're quite ammo limited for the actual sort of ranged weaponry. I think, unless you're like the sorcerer or something like that.
So maybe people didn't like that as much. Because as we know from other things that happened recently, not everyone can pull off a Left 4 Dead 2.
No,
turns out
Back 4 Blood was a bit of a wet. Is it wet fish? What is that? Is that a correct phrase? Damp squib. Yeah, wet fish.
Wet fish.
It's a wet fish of the game.
It's kind of a wet fish.
That would be really bland, right? That would be what a wet fish would mean.
Well, I mean,
this is a perfectly normal thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that was its problem, right? Like, like by all account, it doesn't seem like it's a bad game. It doesn't even seem like it's a bad representation of Left 4 Dead. Like, it just doesn't have an identity, right? It is. I think maybe just because it was Left 4 Dead, and maybe Left 4 Dead is like old now. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what really happened there. Maybe just people aren't into Left 4 Dead style games all that much.
Well,
or maybe it's too crowded at the moment because there's been a lot of other failures on that front. I don't think GTFO did particularly well, for instance. Which was another fairly recent.
And I have to ask this now because this is another case of things not sticking in brain. But did that vampire one actually come out in the end?
Oh no, Redfall. That's not out yet.
Oh yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
That's out early next year. Yeah,
they're going to be late to the party at this point.
They are going to be late to the party. Yeah, because that's a Bethesda run thing.
I don't know.
I want to say it's a Microsoft.
Yeah, it's
studio.
Microsoft. That's the trouble because it's like you don't know whether that was that Bethesda before they got bought.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like Xbox exclusive.
Well, yeah.
But, well, yeah. I think in terms of like shout out to. I have played more Red, although I wasn't too super up on it at the time we talked about it on this podcast. I have continued to stay with Redout too, and just play it in little bursts every now and then. It's like I think all my complaints about it are still valid. They still need to fix the goddamn sound balance. It's so annoying that the music is so drowned out by other things. but it plays pretty well, and their track design is weird at times. Like their progression is far too slow. That is a big problem with like the campaign mode of the game. Like it is far too slow. There's too many events, and like you level up your ships and gain parts for them at an absolute snail's pace, and it's kind of painful to get it going. But the thing is they lock there's like half the tracks I've never played because they're kind of locked behind campaign progression. And as far as I can tell, like as you get more and more tracks, they get weirder and weirder and harder to read. As far as I can tell, like some of the more recent ones I did with these like Cloud Colony or something, or Sky. Anyway, tracks in the middle of the sky, classic. Anti-gravity racer thing, but they have such weird jumps. Like I think the first track you play on it, the very first jump you do isn't just a straight jump. You don't just go forwards and there's a bit of track the other end. No, you've got the track goes one way, but the bit you're supposed to be landing on is actually like parallel to where you are to the left a little bit. And so you've got to jump and then steer yourself in the air to get to this left-hand side. And like the first couple of times I played it, I was like landing on some other bit of track, which wasn't where I was supposed to be. And it's like, this is weird. Why have you made the first track in this area like this? Why is this jump not like in its own particular area, like away from everything else, so I can easily see where you're trying to guide me? It's got some very strange decisions. In its track design, and there's still a couple of corners that are just like almost total death corners unless you brake for them, and you know you're going to just fly off the edge. It's a weird game, Red Out 2. It's a strange thing. But I'm continuing to play it, and I still don't think it's as good as Red Out 1. But it's a competent anti-grav. I'll take it.
Yeah. The genre that. Anything there is.
I'll
pretty crumbs.
I'll pretty much play anything. But yeah, it's as I say, it's competent. It's not terrible. It's not going to dethrone F-Zero or I played some Fast RMX this week as well. I did that as well.
Yeah.
Like that game is still fantastic. Love it. It's not going to dethrone Red Out's not going to dethrone that anytime soon.
So we got. Simulation game of the year.
Racing game.
Then we've got anti-grav of the year.
We actually got an anti-grav race this year, so it gets a shout out for that alone that we got one.
Yeah. And then you want to talk about how Tunic is good then, seeing as it's the actual game of the year.
Well, I was thinking of just like, do we need to talk about it more in a spoilery context? But I don't think we do. I think we kind of unspoilery talked about everything we needed to when we talked about it.
I mean, the puzzles. I guess the sort of thing with Tunic that I like Rob review, like it is fabulous, and I loved its like fezziness, and the weird line it walks between being a Zelda-like, but also with combat a bit like Dark Souls.
a very bit,
but it's got a little bit of that feel. Yeah, I'm not sure I was into some of its mechanics, like on the combat side, especially towards the end of the combat playthrough. Like the stuff that actually drains your max health was kind of irritating. But it's harder than you think. Like is what I would say about Tunic. It's like it's a little bit, given that the main draw should really be its puzzliness, like in the hidden stuff. But that's like it's almost like a separate game, isn't it? Like you can play through Tunic without caring about any of the puzzles, pretty much.
Yeah, to a point.
And then there's this whole other layer on top which you can do afterwards. The manual is probably one of the best ideas.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Yeah,
and I can't. The negative I was alluding to. I was going to say is like I wish it kind of had that just a couple more ideas, right? Because everything about almost every part of the like secret puzzle thing relies on the Holy Cross.
Yeah. Pretty much.
And your manipulation of it. Which, in fairness, if you're thinking back to Fez, like almost everything was to do with like left trigger, right trigger.
Yeah,
but there were some breaks from that, and I'm not sure they really are here.
The thing in Fez is that like there was multiple different ways to tell you about the left trigger, right trigger, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, you had to interpret different things, because there was, like, the vibration one, and then there was,
Right,
like,
yeah.
the Tetris pieces.
Yeah, you had to learn that
And
language.
it all tells you how to press left trigger, right trigger, or some other directions in the case of the Tetris pieces. But, like, in this game, it's pretty much all just a line. It's like The Witness, almost. It's just a line that you have to follow. And there's a few cases where the line is represented slightly differently in the world. Like, there's the one where there's the invisible platform room where you have to follow the line.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then there's the Fez reference where it goes into a 3D spinning pillar that you have to follow the line up as you walk up it.
Right, yeah.
But it's still all just a line. It's not like there's no other version of that.
It's always it's always the same thing you're looking for.
Yeah.
In essence. With the possible exception being the spinny cube.
Kind of, I guess.
Yeah.
That is sort of another... I guess that's sort of another Fez reference, almost.
Yeah, kind of. Wow, and I mean, there's a couple of out there ideas that the wind chimes. Spoilers: the wind chimes are a thing.
Well, kind of, but then that's just finding the manual where it tells you it tells you that it's directions, and that's like that is a different version of you could consider that being like the Tetris pieces or whatever. It's a different version of telling you how to find the directions you need to push.
It doesn't follow the usual visual language.
But it's still just another. You could argue that's that's like the second version of that puzzle, which is the manual puzzles, where you have to interpret the manual to find out the answer.
And I guess I would argue that I wasn't too fond on them actually locking like one of the last things you can do behind understanding the language, right? Because that felt like such the runic text. I mean, because that felt like such a jump compared to everything else that game had done. Like, this was like, I don't mind there being a puzzle like that in the game. Well, but it was kind of a mandatory thing you had to do to finish it.
But do you have to know the language to get that?
I think it's the only way to unlock the front cover. Right, you need to go through that process, and that's how you get the front cover to the book. Or
what is the process that you need to go through, though?
Well, you had to know the language, and then there was a thing you had to do to basically reveal a bit of text in the manual that was written in the language.
Right, and then the text that it reveals is a riddle, essentially.
Is a cryptic clue.
That tells you some directions you have to input, because it's all about that again.
A command to do and where to do it, right?
Well, no, the text doesn't necessarily tell you where to do it, because where you reveal it is the place that you're doing it in, though.
I mean, it doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't have to be, but most people realise that's...
There's a picture there, and that's... Yeah, I got that far.
So yeah, I guess you do...
And then there's the ARG thing as an extra as well.
Well, the ARG thing is a part of the game.
Yeah, which you really don't have to engage with. But like, I kind of wish this puzzle was almost like like part of the AIG, in that it's there and it's advanced and it's cool, but like there's slightly too many hoops for me compared to the rest of the game.
Well, the thing is, it's like, I don't know if there's slightly too many hoops. There's really only one hoop, and it's the figuring out the language. But that's like...
Well, I didn't get the cryptic.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Because I was a moron and misinterpreted it.
But like, the figuring out the language is like, it's not gameplay at all. It's like, there's nowhere in that game does it sort of tell you that you have to work out the language, apart from if you want to. But then there is this one puzzle that does require it, so it's not really if you want to.
Yeah, I think that's sort of my beef with it. Like, because Fez had the thing where you could decode the entire language, right, as well.
Yes.
But you didn't have to. Like, I don't think there was any actual real puzzle locked behind read. I mean, it would help, but I don't think there was any actual...
Well, it depends if you count, like, the pink cubes, because remember there's that one where you have to answer a specific question that it asks you in the language.
In the language. Yeah, okay. But I feel that one's not... At least the language in Fez isn't nearly as obtuse.
Well, right? Yes, I guess.
How you decode it is way simpler.
Well, I don't think the one in Tunic is that bad. I mean, the way I interpreted it was even wrong, and I still got it.
You still got it, yeah. I mean, that's amazing in itself that you got it at all. But
I mean,
with the wrong technique.
And as I said at the time, it definitely sucks if you aren't playing the game in English, because the runic language does not get translated out of English.
It does not, right? But then it never did in Fez either, right? No, the language. I don't think they retranslated the language because it doesn't work in other languages because of the clue in Fez.
Well, no, I mean that should still work, right? I mean, it wouldn't be as obvious, but it would still be a series of words that you could interpret by the thing that's on screen.
I mean, it depends if other languages have a phrase that carries every letter in it.
Sure, but you could still interpret
you could represent it.
You could still just see that there's a very conspicuous visual thing happening there.
Sure, but it requires knowledge of the English phrase and what that means. Right?
Well, no, it wouldn't though necessarily. You could on some level see that it's text, see that there's an unusual thing happening in the room, and then link those two things together. It wouldn't be nearly as easy and nearly as obvious as it is in English, but you could theoretically do that.
Yeah, it depends on if it was the same. Oh yeah, you could change the visual and you could make it something language appropriate, to work.
But I'm just saying that if on some level you were looking for a clue to the language and there was just a weird thing and some language next to each other, you might just...
Maybe. It works in Fez because it's a famous phrase.
Yes, because it's a famous thing in the English language.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, the Fez language could easily have been another language just by having it on the back end represent the letters still, but then it's just typed out in a different language, whereas the one in Tunic is slightly more, because it's, phonetic or whatever, that's slightly less easy to just instantly directly translate to another language.
Yeah.
Which is what I was looking for when I went into the settings and toggled the game into another language. I was like, if this runic language changes, that will tell me a lot, but it didn't. So it didn't actually help.
Don't get me wrong, I imagine that's a pretty epic task to redo that if they needed to. If they were going to do it in other languages.
Well, I mean,
probably really quite tough.
Maybe. I don't know how much phonetical crossover there is in English and other language. Presumably, it's actually maybe more crossover in terms of sounds in language.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, you just have to rewrite every room.
Yes, you do have to reinterpret it all.
Which is probably quite a bit of work. Anyway, Tunic's great.
Yep.
Slight beefs in the edge cases of design aside. It's still pretty great. So there was something immensely satisfying about solving the golden path.
Yeah,
that was a standout moment.
Well, I guess another minor nitpick of function is you kind of wanted it to give you some way of sensing whether you were inputting the path not correctly, but whether it was whether you were continuing the chain essentially. If you failed, if you paused too long or whatever, it should have a sound cue or something to tell you dropped the combo essentially. Because that was one of the hardest things to know whether you were inputting fast enough, and then whether if you'd accidentally paused for a moment too long, whether you had to then redo the whole thing over.
Yeah,
that could have used a slight amount of hint. But maybe that'd be too much. But I mean, once you knew what you were doing, that hint wouldn't help you that much. It wouldn't help you solve anything. It would just help you make sure you're inputting things correctly.
Tunic.
Proper highlight.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there wasn't much else that we necessarily played that came out this year.
There was that inventive anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm looking at...
What's the industry game in the It's Elden Ring, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Which, in fairness, we did get a little bit of podcast action when Kippers filled in. He did play Elden Ring, and he was singing his praises, and he's not a Souls player at all.
No.
But even he was like, no, Elden Ring's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It seems like the standout from that kind of thing. Because, I mean, I'm playing God of War, and it's fantastic, but, I mean, it's the same game. It's better, but arguably. Well, you know what I mean. It's just more God of War.
Yeah, is it presentation? Well, presentationally, obviously, you're getting the PS5 boost.
Yeah, it's top notch, yeah. Presentation. And Story's good, but it is, ultimately, at least what I mean is Elden Ring is an evolution of the Souls. The Souls game. It's open world. I mean, it's quite different in that sense from prior Souls games, whereas God of War 2 is more God of War.
I'll keep the critical train running and be like biggest disappointment of the year for me. I think might be Trek to Yomi.
Right.
Not Bayonetta.
I mean Bayonetta is a bummer.
Yeah,
but it's
fine.
Yeah, it's kind of fine, and there's an essence of Bayonetta under it, even if it is hampered by the Switch and some design decisions that make it, I don't think, as good as the previous games. Whereas, and given how much of a gap there's been since the two, I'm disappointed, but I can kind of understand in a weird way. Whereas Trek to Yomi, man. Everything about how that game looked and was being advertised was pushing my buttons. It's like, was this a Kurosawa-style samurai game presented in that like old school black and white scratchy film format with like 2D beat, well, some sort of 2D combat system and some supernatural elements and all that kind of stuff. Let's sign me up. There's and actual Japanese like talent in there behind the voice work and stuff like that. This should have been good, and it kind of wasn't. And I was quite bummed out by that at the end. I sort of enjoyed its style more than I did the process of playing it. Like it was a bit of it was a shame. It was a shame. It should have been swinging. But we're going to get like a drag edition, I suppose, to fill that gap.
Sort of.
I mean, sure, it doesn't have the black and white, like scratchy film look or any of the. I mean, I bet it will have some ridiculous soundtrack as well, rather than authentic.
Probably.
But it will have Majima in it, so well, I'm happy.
Or some distant relation, Majima, at least.
Oh yeah. Well, that's its whole thing, right?
Yes.
Isn't it? Like it's a cast replacement. It's like what if the cast of Yakuza were playing this historical drama? Majima as that kind of thing.
And then there was weird like games that didn't stick, like Rogue Legacy 2 didn't stick with me for some reason.
Yeah.
For some
weirdly
vaguely unexplainable reason that I still can't work out. Even having played it again for that video that's coming up, where it's just like, I'm still not getting into this, really.
It is odd.
I mean, as I said when we first talked about it, I'm not sure I agree with some of the design decisions of how it's become more of a modern game, essentially. How they've tried to gate areas and have this skill progression and made it sort of more complicated in having these very specific skills that unlock as you progress. And I don't know. But I feel like maybe that would be helped by getting deeper into it and unlocking some more of the randomness, like playing more runs with different classes, because there's apparently so many more different classes now that might mix it up, and maybe that'll make it more interesting. But it just hasn't stuck. And then there's games that
would that be because like. Will it help when you've unlocked more of the classes? Because like your ability to play as like one of the standard dude will diminish because it's like less likely to come up as an heir.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like the standard dude is such a like. That was the main thing that made Rogue Legacy as good as it was that like weirdly precise nature of it, where it's like you move so sharply and like the sword swing is this very huge but all like instant arc.
Yeah, well defined and sudden, like one frame animation, like almost.
And that was what made playing Rogue Legacy so like enjoyable, for it being like precise and with like the dash dodge and all that stuff and the double jumping and all that. That was why that game worked so well. And that's one of the things where it's like you start feeling where it's like the more different mechanics they introduce, you're starting to feel it being less precise. And I talked about the weird, like how they've made projectile characters, and it's like this weird right stick pullback thing and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't know. maybe I'll get to play it more. And then there's games that I kind of wanted to play and never got to because of dumb reasons, like Metroid Dread, I guess.
Yeah, so although that's all the game of last year, technically. We still haven't got around to that.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to play that.
I mean, I've been keeping an eye on, like, places to get it at not full price, essentially.
So hard.
I have seen the odd Dread deal. Like, it's happening. Like, if you don't mind going physical.
Yeah. And I would be looking for physical anyway, because that's just what I have on my Switch.
Yeah.
I have all the physicals.
Yeah, I wonder why I've done. I think I've done the same thing. I've gone like almost all physical.
I just don't want to put another goddamn memory card in that thing. And the one that's in there is far too small to start with. I mean, the one that I put in there, not just the internal memory, which is also tiny. But...
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't remember how. I have put a stick in there as well, but I can't remember how big it is. I haven't really had a problem since sticking a card in it.
I mean, I'm going to have to delete all kinds of shit to get Zelda 2 on there.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, so looking forward, is 2023 going to be a year?
Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom.
But like, what else? Is there anything else we know of at this point?
I mean,
Kerbal Space Program 2 is meant to come out next year.
Street Fighter 6.
Street Fighter 6.
Starfield.
Oh, yeah, I guess, eventually.
That could be bad, though.
Star Citizen might even come out.
No.
Or a version of it, at least.
Maybe, but no. Not a chance. Mother chuffing bomb rush cyberpunk.
Well, yeah, there's that.
Oh, I'm so hype. So hype.
And I guess maybe Satisfactory will actually come out. I'm pretty sure that's meant to come out next year. Finally.
What's the really big shit? Is there like a Naughty Dog game or something? No.
No sign of whatever Naughty Dog's next project is currently.
The sequel to Death Stranding meant to be coming out next year.
Oh, God.
No, I don't think that's next year. They just announced that it exists.
Yes, they did.
So, I would give it time.
You would hope.
Plenty of time.
No freaking Halo game for a while. I mean,
no, that's going to be a long time before we see anything like that. Because I still don't. Hasn't been much chatter of like around Halo Infinite like since the Forge update. Weirdly, like it's been very quiet. Like other than like, because it seemed like the story of the year was like, hey, Halo Infinite isn't really doing this whole live service thing very well, and they keep ballsing up their season passes, and hey, everything is taking way too long to be updated and changed, and oh look, they've introduced a whole load more glitches and fixed other ones, and like it's all been a bit ropey sounding, isn't it? Like, and I don't actually think there's a huge amount wrong with Halo Infinite, like playing it. Like maybe it's just the hardcores that have some trouble with it, but I mean, I guess it's just like we're in the world now where like new content is expected to come out at a certain pace, and Halo wasn't hitting it. And they dropped local co-op.
Yep.
So screw those guys.
Yeah.
And they dropped co-op at all. For a while.
Online co-op is I think it's available now.
But not having it at launch was, stupid.
Yeah.
If you're going to not even have that version of co-op.
It's such a tentpole of Halo for me. Like the co-op, local co-op is such a thing for us, and this, it's not just us. It is a sentiment echoed across quite a lot of the Halo team, the Halo players that have been there since the start. Right? It's a big part of Halo, and for them to have I don't know what hurts more, the fact that they like in Halo 5 they were like it's not important, and then just didn't bother building it into the design of the game at all, even though the whole game is actually a co-op experience. And I then thought that local co-op is not a requirement. It's like what are you even thinking? That's so idiotic. And then at least in Halo Infinite they had the gall to be like, well, yeah, we understand, we cocked up last time and it became technically insurmountable because of the way we designed the game to actually do it, so we're not going to do that this time, we're going to make it right. Or abandon it. It's like, oh my god. I don't know. Like, I don't know if Microsoft have much luck with like the studios they've got that have taken over big franchises, right? Like 343 don't seem to be hitting it.
Yeah,
with
the
Halo.
caretakers.
The Coalition,
That
I'm
never
not sure
works.
are really hitting it with Gears.
Yeah, I mean, when has that worked?
Yeah, it hasn't really.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
Well, I mean, there's definitely cases where like other teams have come in and done a good job, right? The obvious one I always think of is like Obsidian's work on Fallout.
Oh yeah,
New
but that's a
Vegas.
bit.
Yeah, but
Different, I
that,
think.
they didn't take over that. They
Yeah.
just borrowed it
Yeah,
for a second.
it only happened for a single game, right? But Obsidian did a good job with that.
But they've
with
done that.
one.
They did that with KOTOR, right? They borrow
Sure,
it and then
yeah.
make a weird one that everyone likes.
Yeah, they did a good job. So like,
Yeah.
Obsidian might be the outlier, but yeah, you're right. When does it happen?
Because in reality,
Obsidian should do a freaking Mass Effect game. That would be weird.
Oh, they really should. I mean, they're already doing
I
an
guess they
Elder
are.
Scrolls
Yeah.
game, but not called Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I am trying to. I'm struggling to think what there must be some biggies next. Oh, Tekken 8, I guess.
you've named 2 fighting games. I don't think those count as biggies, really.
I
mean,
think Street Fighter 6 will crush, right?
Well, I don't know. Tekken and Street Fighter, they're
Yeah.
pretty big games.
They're
It's
big
like-
fighting games. They're not big games.
Yeah, I suppose.
I don't know. Do you think Street Fighter still has that like brand power to be like, oh, it's that Street Fighter?
No, I don't think so.
You think that moment is like 5 killed that off?
I think probably before 5. I think 4 might have been the last one that general audiences cared about, but it was
What was big?
but
Yeah.
it was a Street Fighter game, and therefore immediately alienated all the general audiences.
Yeah, Street Fighter 4 was big. So I think at the time of Street Fighter 4, it was still like, if you were to ask someone what a fighting game was, they might be able to name Street Fighter.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
And I feel less convinced by that as an idea these days. Not because I don't know what other fighting game they would be playing, but like, actually, what would they be playing? Like, what is the
Mortal Kombat?
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Mortal Kombat overtaken.
As a mainstream idea, yes, probably.
Maybe. Right.
I can't actually really think what the next year's biggies are. There must be some, right?
When's Metroid Prime 4?
It's still unannounced.
Yeah, still unannounced. After it
I mean,
happened.
you
Will
know,
it come out on the Switch, or will it have to be on the next?
I mean,
hardware?
that's the next argument point. Is
is next year going to be
Is this-
at least the announcement of the
the
next
Switch
Switch?
Pro.
Switch 2,
Yeah.
yeah. Because
They should just call it Switch 2. No, PlayStation had the right idea. Just call it 2, 3, 4.
I think Ninty might this time.
I did the classic thing of immediately thinking of a really bad name as soon as I was forced to think about the concept. Where I was like, you should call it the Switch Up
Yeah, the Switch up.
because it's
That's not bad.
more up. It's
yeah,
better.
because it's plus plus.
That's not bad. I'll take it.
No, it is bad.
Switch
Like a
up.
one-up mushroom.
Yeah,
Switch
exactly.
up, and then instead of click, it's like ding. Oh god!
Oh, but then we'll end up with a situation where like no one knows what it is, like the Wii U.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why you
Don't do that.
put a 2 on it. And
Put a 2 on it.
it's good.
Yeah, I think everyone knows what you're getting into if you put a 2 on it. Put a banging 2 on it.
And we're still fairly certain that Zelda is not going to be the cross-system game again.
No.
This sequel is definitely coming out on just the Switch.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll re-release it for sure. Eventually, once the
maybe.
new
It's
It's
system
quite
comes
slow
out.
on the re-release.
Yeah,
aren't they?
Nintendo
Yeah.
don't do that nearly as much.
But I think they would, like, because of a game that could benefit from
Well,
a
I mean,
hardware upgrade. Like,
Yeah, if
it's-
we're assuming the Switch 2 isn't massively different in some, like, software disabling way, then yes, probably caught up the old
I
game.
imagine
You
if
still
they-
can't get the. You still can't get the Wind Waker remake on the Switch, right? Because it was for the Wii U.
Oh, did they not put that out again?
I don't think
they
so.
I thought they put it out
They
again
put
on the
out
Switch.
Twilight Princess, but I don't think you can get Wind Waker.
Yeah, I
on the
don't remember.
Switch. They should definitely do that. It's a no-brainer. Anyway,
Weird. Yeah, I kind of thought that had happened, but maybe you're right.
yeah, they're not that good with re-releases.
I mean, they're a bit like Disney, right? They like the idea
Yeah,
of the vault.
style. Yeah.
Yeah, and keeping things to their chest.
Anyway, yeah.
Like it's still was it last year or the year before with the whole you can't buy that Mario pack anymore.
They
yeah.
deleted that really quickly.
The one with
Yeah.
Mario 64 in it.
Yeah, you cannot get hold of that anymore.
which was okay because by all accounts it wasn't actually very well made.
Yeah, it was okay emulation.
It was all right. Yeah.
So maybe when they do it again next time, it'll be better.
Who knows?
What was that? That was 64 Sunshine and Galaxy One.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
Well, was it just Galaxy 1 or did it have Galaxy 2 as well? I don't remember.
I don't think so.
I'm sure they've re-released Galaxy 2 at some point, but I don't remember where or how.
I mean, the Galaxy. If you want the weird one, I think the Galaxy games actually came out on the Chinese version of the Nvidia Shield.
Right. Okay.
That's like the weirdest place that's happened. And that was official.
Weird.
But I think the work they put into making that version of the game ended up feeding back into
Must have
the Switch release.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they'd already done the work to upscale like the UI elements and things like that and redraw them all. What else? We've got Square Enix have got a couple of big games next year. They've got Forspoken and Final Fantasy 16.
Right.
Assuming that comes out next year.
And the Final Fantasy 7 Part 2, right?
Would they still
Assuming that comes out next year.
I don't think they've announced when that's due.
I mean, you'd hope relatively soon, considering how fast they got the Crisis Core part out. It's like they seem to have a reasonably streamlined process for shitting these out. It appears.
I mean, Crisis Core is more of a straight remake, though, isn't it? Than a sort of a remaster, more than isn't it? Than what they did with FF7.
Well, somewhat, but I mean, it's not like it's still running on that same engine, presumably.
Right? Yeah. We should really get around to playing.
Yes, we should. Another game that we missed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I should just straight up buy the PC version of it so we can do it for video.
Do a video.
Maybe.
I mean, that was the original video.
I mean,
was
I've got
FF7.
I've got the PS4 version,
Right, yeah.
but it's not the enhanced Integrade edition for PC. And,
Yeah.
you know,
It was a bit buggy, that first one, so I think they fixed some of it. Yeah.
and it might. I don't know how much of a stress it will put my PC under. Right, it strikes me as one of those games that might actually bring my machine to its knees.
Yeah.
Like, whilst we're actually capturing it.
Possibly.
We'll have to see. Yeah, that could be an upcoming video series, potentially. Let's watch out for that.
Or at least a game that we get round to playing.
Oh, we've got all those
about.
Assassin's Creeds next year as well.
Oh, God.
Like 4 of them.
Oh, right. Way past Assassin's Creed. Jesus Christ. I'd have to do a lot to get me back interested in Assassin's Creed.
They've got that. Was it Mirage is mildly interesting, right? Because it's a non-open world one.
Wow.
They're doing a more sort of streamlined experience version of it, which might capture some of the original essence that may have been lost in their quest to make those games enormous.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it might make it like more of a stealth puzzle game, like a Splinter Cell or something, where you're trying to get to the assassination target in like a smooth way, rather than just like jumping in from whatever rooftop is in the vicinity, like you can in an open world.
I'm just trying to think what else has got replaced. Is in theory coming out next year. That cool looking pixel art thing. It looks badass.
The one that might actually
come out. Yeah. Stellar Blade comes to mind, not because of the fan service, but because, hey, Team Ninja are making a Ninja Gaiden style game again. And, you know, everyone loves Ninja Gaiden. So
sort of.
What's the shit that we voted for that didn't come out on the...
Slime Rancher 2.
Slime Rancher 2, yeah.
And apparently Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight.
I got screwed by Silksong.
Yeah. Hogwarts Legacy's not out yet, but that's not far away.
Oh. That'll be weird.
I mean, that depends on your opinion of current Harry Potter, I suppose.
Harry Potter discourse. Yep. I wonder if that Star Wars game will be a bit better than the last one. Not that the last one was necessarily bad, it just didn't really appeal.
Well, Jedi Survivor, yeah. I keep forgetting about that.
If it's a one-up on the previous, it might be good.
Jedi
don't like
Jedi
his
was
face.
Good.
Why
that's unfortunate because it's his real face.
Yeah, but why?
It's not like they CG'd his face to be like that. That's the guy's face.
I know, but why did they pick some ginger dude with no soul to be the... Anyway.
Yeah. The first Jedi game was good, but it was perhaps a little maybe lacking in soul is actually the
I
right
think it
way to
was a
describe
little-
his face aside.
Yeah,
like,
I think so. The environment. I saw Gary playing it, and like the environments and enemies and stuff seemed sort of contrived.
I think it just, and also like,
and it was just doing a Souls combat light, thing.
kind of, yeah, but it played pretty well.
Yeah.
And,
it
like,
was slick enough, and it is a good studio, right? It's
it had the slight
Respawn.
problem that, like, I guess a little bit like High on Life does as well, where the exploration was kind of pointless. It's like you could go and find all these like crates and stuff, but they were all cosmetics.
Yeah.
Like there was absolutely no like real reason to go hunt that stuff out.
Yeah, it's fine.
But it could, and the story didn't really come to much. Honestly.
No.
It wasn't that good a story.
No.
the end.
They're just squeezing in random stories around the current lore of Star Wars. Canon is getting super overstuffed now. Again, after they decanonized everything.
Just go back in time, right? Do some more Old Republic stuff.
Yeah.
Or go after, like the original extended canon did.
Yeah, but they can't now because
They
they've
don't-
got
they-
those.
Well, it's reserved for Disney, basically.
Yeah, and they don't want to do that in, like for whatever films, like what the next trilogy will be, because you know they're going to do another one at some point.
I don't know when that'll be set though. Yeah,
Well, afterwards.
Do you think? After
they'll just
fucking Ray and Finn and
they'll come up with some bullshit.
right.
That's Star Wars, right?
Yeah, probably.
They should do a Star Wars 40k, put it 40,000 years in the future, just have it be completely different.
I mean, that's what KOTOR is, except in reverse.
yes,
right?
that's the minus 40k.
Yeah.
We've got that not Batman game still coming. Rocksteady's new joint.
Right.
Oh
The,
yeah.
The Suicide
Still.
Squad.
Killed the Justice League. Yeah. I don't know. Could be okay.
We
Not
still haven't
super
seen how that
excited.
game plays.
Yeah.
We haven't seen anything about what that really is. All we keep getting is like CG
Trailers,
cutscenes.
yeah.
I
think there is some stuff, but anyway. Yeah. Game's coming. Still, Zelda. That's the main thing.
The one that,
Zelda's the biggie.
It's gonna crush it. So
It's going to destroy our lives.
yes.
Well, if I've even got the time to play it, that's the worrying
you're wrong.
That's the
thing.
advantage of
the Switch.
the Switch and the
Well, yeah, I suppose you
and the
can-
shrine system.
I suppose you
Well,
can-
I'm assuming that is going to continue the same
Yeah.
way.
I guess, well, the Switch, yeah, you can just like pause it at any time, right?
Yeah.
and come back into it, provided Zach and I don't continue stabbing things. And I need to keep switching games, which we've got a lot of stabbing to do still.
Well, but then you can just save anywhere in Zelda.
Yeah.
Assuming that still continues to be the case, which I
Yeah, that
can't
works.
imagine why. it
It'll be
wouldn't.
the same engine, so I'm sure it'll work. Yeah. Well, that'll be 2023 then.
Oh, Atomic Heart's coming out as well for that Mick Gordon soundtrack.
Right, I think that may be our review of 2022.
Yeah.
An interesting, yeah. Yeah. And
Forza Motorsport.
Oh.
That's a biggie. Forgot about that. We're actually getting a Forza Motorsport game. I'm actually mildly hyped for that, even though I keep forgetting it exists. Sorry, carry on.
that's all right.
It just suddenly reminded me myself, like, oh yeah.
Get a Gran Turismo competitor in there. Yeah. So check out our YouTube channel for videos. It sounds like there'll be. What's the next one coming up? I can't.
The last one we recorded.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we haven't got any backlog now.
No,
Okay.
We're running right on the edge of doom.
Right on the edge. Yep. So look out for that one, and then next time we'll have news.
Well, maybe.
There'll be news.
Maybe.
But January, who knows?
I mean, next year is going to be dominated by what happens with the Activision buyout, right?
Yeah.
That's
So we'll hear all about it.
That's the big story that is still to come, and whether or not it happens or not.
But that's the trouble is like it might suddenly become a not big story. It might suddenly become not a story at all. Actually, I guess when it ends, it will be rapidly become not a story in either way. Either it won't happen and then nothing will happen, or it will happen and then the games will just come out.
Yeah.
So like once that story is over, it's going to be very over.
Thinking about games that I surprisingly didn't care about this year. I haven't touched Overwatch 2. And I quite like Overwatch 1. I quite like it a lot. But yeah, I haven't even remotely checked out Overwatch 2. I probably should do that at some point.
So you can be disappointed by loot boxes, apparently.
Well, yeah.
That's what everyone says.
There was the cosmetics in Overwatch 1 were pretty great. Like that was a reason you wanted them. Whereas, yeah, I doubt the new systems probably mean you
Matter as
can't
much.
ever get them. Yeah. Anyway, that's a podcast.
Cool. Yeah.
That's 2022,
There you go.
baby.
2022. Happy Salad Game of the Year. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Oh, no, sorry. Game of the Year. Bug Snacks. Whoa, whoa.
Oh yeah, I played Bug
Talking
Snacks.
about Bug
Yeah, I
Snacks.
did play Bug
Sorry.
Snacks.
Happy Salad Game of the Year. Tunic.
Definitely cheated.
Probably,
Yeah.
actually. But also Dwarf Fortress.
But also Dwarf
And
Fortress.
Splatoon 3.
Join us next year for more Saladcast. Catch you then. Bye.